And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, yeah.
Right, attention to roll call.
That's right. Good morning, everybody. 8:05 live Eastern Time. It's 5:05 for me. I'm on the West Coast of California. It's bright and early. Movie review time. Listen, we're gonna give this a college boy try to switch gears. Fun Fridays. Try to switch it up, and I think it's gonna be cool. Listen, first of all, I'm a huge movie buff. I love movies. I think that movies do relate to life, and we can talk about how it does relate to life. Is it just entertainment? Is this something that's real? Is it far-fetched? John, what are your thoughts on The Departed? I know you were talking offline. You were telling me you love it. It's not one of your favorites, but you like it. You think it's a movie full of quotes.
I think it's a great movie. I do. It's not one of my favorite movies, but I think it shows how brilliant Scorsese is. It's definitely a tale of good and evil and the mixture of both. And yeah, I think like I said, the first time I watched the movie, I really didn't like it, especially with the way it ended. But it's one of those movies, as you watch it and as you listen and it goes further, it kind of grows on you. And that's like kind of what happened with The Departed with me, is where I'm like, there's so many lines in that movie that are brilliant. And I really do. I think it's a movie. I think you could take every scene. You could take, and we'll walk through the scenes, but you could take every scene in this movie, and there are 5 or 6 quotes that are absolutely either something to ponder or they're hysterical. It's one or the other.
All right. First of all, I love this movie. I think it's hysterical. It comes down to cop humor, right? Which I think is great. Obviously they got some information from cops or detectives about what actually goes on in the job. So some of the stuff they talk about is just hysterical. The one-liners, the jokes, because it's true. Cops have that kind of humor, always break each other's chops at work, which is what you should do. I hope it still goes on. It's sort of starting to dwindle down. It's not the same, but I think what this movie does highlight, I think it's very interesting that your childhood could shape your adulthood, and sometimes the people that are in your life could also shape your adulthood, right? Because if we were to mix characters, right? So Matt Damon plays Colin Sullivan, right? And you have Leonardo DiCaprio who plays Billy Costigan. And it could have been very easy switch roles. If Billy Costigan was the kid approached by Frank Costello, played by Jack Nicholson, lives could have been different and intertwined. So sometimes your childhood could shape what happens in adulthood. So I think it's quite interesting. What do you think about that, John? Do you think that sometimes your childhood could shape your adulthood or the people that are around you?
Well, I think that. All right. So first, I think this movie is very religious, and I don't think a lot of people pick up on that. The title of the movie itself is based upon the Catholic religion, right? To the souls of all the faithfully departed, right? And I think a lot of this has to do with childhood, but I think it has more to do with our internals and our morals. Because I don't agree with you that if Billy Costigan was this kid sitting here when he's approached by Frank Costello instead of the character that Matt Damon is, I don't believe it would be the same outcome. I think that they have very similar upbringings. I think they were exposed to very similar things. They both really, Costigan came from that rich family, but he had ties to Southie, right? And then this is Matt Damon's character. His father, they don't really tell us where his father is, right? He's just not there. He's not in the picture, and he's living with his grandmother. And kind of you get the same impression that this kid was bounced all over the place too. Lived with an uncle he hated, but he kind of had some street experience. So I don't know. I mean, like I think that it shapes them. The movie shapes, like, their childhood definitely shaped who they are, but I don't think they act the same way because I think they both had the potential to go the same route, in my opinion.
Well, you're definitely right. And I don't necessarily think there's a right or wrong, but I think your childhood could shape your future. And sometimes it's not, you don't necessarily, you don't get the choice of where you're brought up and what your upbringing is like. And yes, Billy Costigan, he has to live a double life, right? He has a rich family, but he also has a family that's that's tied to gang life, tied to drugs in Southie, and that's the whole joke with Staff Sergeant Dingham, right? Oh, you were a double kid, right? Sometimes you act a certain way with the rich kids, and sometimes you act certain ways with Southie. So my point is, if he lived just in Southie, maybe he would turn out different because he was able to have that double play, to have that double talk. And exactly, I think the character of Colin Sullivan was tossed around. Also said, "Oh yeah, your father was I forgot what the name is, something Sullivan. All right, you're Sullivan's kid, right?" And he starts taking care of him. So he needs to go in the working in the South Bronx and working the Lower East Side and working in Stapleton. I saw plenty of kids. I'll never forget. There was this kid in the Lower East Side, and he was part of a crew there called the Money Boys. So any of my cops, if they're watching this, they know what I'm talking about. And this kid, we used to say he was brilliant, such a smart kid, great leader, but he didn't use it for something positive. He had a rough upbringing. All the other kids would call him the general, and he was in charge of this crew, young kid. And I we locked this kid up so many times. And I remember I would sit down with this kid and say, you know what? If you had the right people in your corner, you could do great things. You're super smart, you're intelligent, but unfortunately, you run around with a gang, and you know what ended up happening? You got killed. And I always said, if he had the right person in his corner, like Mike Tyson, if he had a Customato in his corner, this kid could have been something because he was a leader. He had strength and he was intelligent, but he had the wrong people in his corner. So I do think that sometimes your childhood shapes your future. Yes, you can make the decision. I had a rough upbringing. So do you. I grew up very poor, and I grew up in some rough neighborhoods. And I could have made a choice to go the wrong route, and I didn't. But I think that also helped because I had a good support system. I had a very supportive father. I was very involved in basketball, always involved in martial arts. So I had culture and community. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, like I agree with you, but I think a lot of this again has to do with the internal morals. And what's his face got mad at me? Who's the guy he claims to be the dirtiest cop? Michael Dowd, 7-5 documentary, right? He got mad at me because I said he was always a piece of garbage, right? He didn't come into the department didn't change him. He didn't come in the department one day, get a free cup of coffee from a guy on the corner and say, you know what, I'm going to start robbing, I'm going to burglarize old women's house. I'm going to respond to the house and steal all their money. That's not my opinion. He says it's different. He blames it on supervisors and he blames it on the lack of supervision and all this other crap. I don't buy it. I say that he was always that person. I say that when he was a kid, there was something in him that made him steal. So when we look at this character specifically, this opening scene, right? It's Lord, give me shelter, right? It's give me shelter. That's the music playing in the background, right? Give me shelter. You hear it in the background. And he's sitting here and he's kind of like a lost soul, right? Like his father's not around. He lives with his grandmother. And Frank Costello comes up. Frank Costello's piece of garbage, right? Like shows right from the get-go he's a piece of garbage. The way he talks to the young girl at the counter, but he's got money. Everybody's afraid of him. He's influenced by it. He likes it. But again, he's an altar boy. Opening line of the movie, great line. I don't want to be a product of my environment. I want my environment to be a product of me. That, to me, tells me who Frank Costello is right off the bat. What do you think about that line? I don't want to be a product of my environment. I want my environment to be a product of me.
Oh, absolutely. I thought that opening line was great with the opening scene, right? It's all about riots, race riots, right? You see that there. What does he say at the time, right? It was the Italians that had control, but 20 years after an Irishman couldn't get a job, now these guys are in control. So it's about power. It's about power. And he said, I don't have a problem with the Chappies, right? He said, we're not racist. He said, but you got to go out there and take it. And that was his thought. You got to go out there. You have to have the power. You got to go out there and take it. And that's what it's about. Take it. Take what's yours. And that's what he means by by the environment being a product of him take control and power. And that's what the Sullivan kid sees, right? Sullivan sees, wow, here's Frank Costello. He sees the way he talks to women, how he talks to his young girl. He's like, oh, did you get your period yet? I mean, totally demeaning, piece of garbage, and that guy there has to take it because Frank Costello's the man there, and he sees that. Here's somebody who's got money, see the way he talks, see the power that he has, while simultaneously he's an altar boy. So which one had more power over him? Was it the church or the money? And it was the money.
Yeah, and I think a lot of scenes in here, Frank Costello represents Satan, right? I think that what you see throughout this, like especially at past this scene, you see Colin as an altar boy, right? And then flashes right from the scene for him doing the altar boy, right? He's blowing the incense right from that scene that he's in the auto body shop with Costello, right? And Costello tells him, church is like, I don't remember exactly what he says to him, but he's like, the church is for people that they tell you to sit, they tell you to stand. If that's what you want to do, I got no use for you. There's nothing I could do for you. And he says, a man makes his own way. No one gives it to you. You got to take it. Right? And so he's kind of luring him in. And to me, it's really the separation away from good. It's he's leading this kid down a life of evil. Like he's drawing him away from the church. He's drawing him away from what's holy. He's drawing him away from what's good. And almost, I'm God. Frank Costello's God.
Spot on. That's exactly what it is. You want to go to church? You want to be a slave to the church and you're going nowhere? You know what? Exactly that. I'm God. I'm the one that has power because I have the money. People listen to me and people do what I tell them because I have the money. I'm the one that's actually control. The church doesn't have money behind it. That's what he's telling them. And I love the fact when it segues into what are you going to become in life, right? When he says to him, when you're facing a loaded gun, what's the difference, right? Rather becoming a cop or a criminal. When he's decided for him to become a cop or criminal, he's saying, when you're facing a loaded gun, what's the difference? He's essentially questioning the morality of being a cop, right? Wrestling with being a cop or being a criminal. And to him, what he's saying is, it's the same thing. What's the difference? But what side do you want to be on? Which side do you have more power? Which side do you have money? And that's why I say he's shaping him. He's grooming him. He was able to take a weak mind. This kid was a weak mind because he's tossed around, and I think that Billy Costigan was in a rough environment. Does childhood shape your adulthood? Yes, but it does help your mindset. And obviously, Billy Costigan, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, had a stronger mindset. And Colin Sullivan, played by Matt Damon, has a weaker mind, and he was able to get indoctrinated by Frank Costello.
Yeah, I mean that was a great line. Like let's explore that a little because so right before that line he says one thing. He says Frank Costello, they're in the body shop. He says to him, "When you decide to be something, you can be it." That's what the church doesn't tell you, right? And I agree with that line, except for the fact that's not the church actually does tell you that. The Bible actually does tell you that. Knock and the door shall be open. Ask and you shall receive, right? So it actually does tell you when you decide something to be something, you can be it. I mean, that's a powerful statement. It's really gripping, especially on a young man. Like I could be anything I want to be, right? And he just said we went from we couldn't get jobs 20 years ago to the presidency, right? He just explained to him the rise in power and how if you want to be something, you could be it, but he's drawing them in. And then he says to them, when I was a kid, they used to tell you we could become cops or we could become criminals. But what I'm saying to you is when you're facing a loaded gun, what's the difference? What do you think about that statement? Because honestly, that's the movie. That's The Departed. It's that whole storyline. Is there a difference between good and evil? Is there a difference between cops and criminals? True cops.
That's the theme of the movie right there. That's the entire theme. That line itself, that the lines are blurred between being a cop and being a criminal. That's what he's trying to tell him. What's the difference? The difference is morality, right? That's the part that he's not telling. The difference is morality. But what he's telling him is the physicality of actually being out there as a criminal or a cop. To him, the lines are blurred. It's the same thing. You're still facing a life of danger. But I think that's the theme of the movie. And the theme of the movie comes down to morality. And that's the difference. That's the dichotomy between being a criminal and being a cop for Colin Sullivan and for Billy Costigan is morality. What do you think about that?
Yeah. That's what I agree with you. I agree with you. That's what I think. That's what I'm saying. Like that was what I'm saying originally. Like I think it really always boils down to your internal courage and your internal morality in it. But yeah, so the question is there a difference though between cops and criminals? We know that I know there was a study done years back where they checked brain scans and how cops and criminals react to stress, and it's almost the same thing. And like thought patterns, they feel like wavelengths, brain lengths. Cops and criminals think along the same lines, right? And almost in a way, I mean, I've said it before. I hung out with some bad kids. I hung out in the parks. And when I became a cop, my eyes were open and I saw a lot of things that other people wouldn't see when we were watching people, when we were doing surveillance. They would be like, how the hell did you see that? And I'm like, well, I kind of watched this. You know what I mean? I kind of saw it. And I'm not saying that I did or didn't partake in things, but like I wasn't really ever a bad kid, but I was exposed to a lot of things. There was really no difference between me at a point than the kid who went into a life of crime. No difference. I might have actually been considered probably worst, at a point, or more, or the person that could potentially be a leader or do more harm. So it's like, is there a difference between a cop and a criminal?
I think there's a big difference, but there's also different types of criminals, right? There are different types of criminals, right? There's white-collar criminals. There's criminals that commit heinous crimes. There's different types of criminals. But the criminality that we have in The Departed is mob type, and it's criminality that even leads to murder. Whatever it takes to make money, to keep them in charge, to keep them having power, and to have money, that is the type of criminality. So I do think there's a difference. I think that the difference is really highlighted. You mentioned Michael Dowd. I think Michael Dowd is the perfect example, is the fear of consequence. And I think that having a conscience is what separates being a cop and being a criminal. And I think Michael Dowd had spoken about it too. I don't think that Michael Dowd had a moral conscience when he was working as a police officer. Because, I mean, think about it. You have to, in order to carry out criminality while working as a cop, for one, you need not to have fear of consequence. And you need to you can't have a full conscience, because at some point you would think that your conscience would get the best of you and your fear of consequence would be enough for you not to engage in criminality. And I think Michael Dowd didn't have those things. I don't think he had fear of consequence. And he says it all the time. To this day, he says when he was out there, being a cop was about winning. He was always winning. And what he meant by winning is that he was always getting over on people, getting over on the system, to a point that he felt he would never get caught. So to me, that's the difference of a mindset between a cop and a criminal. I would think, John, your mindset is different. You think about consequence. You have a conscience, and that conscience would stop you. I mean, that's why I say all the time, you think about when people go out and commit crimes, think about the steps and how many opportunities they have to stop before they actually carry out that crime. And I'm not talking about, crimes of passion, when people are involved, in situations with a wife, husband, ex-wife, whatever, those things people's minds are fueled with passion. They're not thinking clearly. But someone that's thinking clearly and is not doing a crime of passion has to bypass all those things that stop them from committing that crime, and they still do it anyway because of lack of conscience and a lack of fear of consequence.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree with you. I think that's there's a close line. It's a really thin line, because how are you going to go out there and proactively police and see crime and catch criminals if you can't think like they think? And in order for you to think how they think, you have to kind of know where they're coming from. You kind of have to have sat there in their shoes at some point. I'm not saying you had to have been a criminal. Someone asked if I ever snatched a chain. No, absolutely not. I never stole a thing in my life. Never from a store and never from nobody. I would never do that ever. And I've actually stopped people from getting their chain stolen and items stolen. Probably shouldn't have got involved, but I did. And so what I'm talking about is that line, right? Like the line's there. To me, they're the same person, these two. They're both intelligent. They both have ties to South Boston. They're both good-looking, physical males. They both enter the police academy, and this goes into the next scene, right? They both enter the police academy at the same time, right? They both excel highly at the same time, right? One has hooks, right? Why does he have hooks? Who has hooks? Matt Damon's character has hooks. Why does he have hooks? Because nefarious underworld characters are tied to the upper echelon of the state police. This kid has no hooks, doesn't know anybody, and he's making his own way. He's making his own way in the world. But they're so similar, it's not funny. And they even show you here the degrees of separation amongst all of us, right? Because here Costigan is running alongside someone who later in the movie works on Matt Damon's team and works under him, right? And he's telling him here, what does he tell him here? He tells him, you're a black guy in Boston. You're already screwed, right? He uses a different word, but like that's what he tells him. You're already screwed. Cop humor, real talk, real social issues. This is how cops talk amongst each other. Why do you think what do you think about this scene? Why do you think he said that to him though? You're a black guy in Boston. You're already screwed.
I thought it was great. That line. And I don't think it's racist at all. He's telling the truth. That's cop humor. Like, listen, you're a black guy in Boston. You're already screwed. Exactly. He's right about that. What he's saying, and I don't think it's racist at all. That's how cops talk, right? You're a black guy in Boston, you're screwed because people are going to label you, right? They're going to say, oh, you're a sellout for becoming a cop. That's what they're going to tell you because you're black. Right away, hear that from the neighborhood, right? Same thing with Billy Costigan, played by Leonardo DiCaprio. When he sees his rich family at the hospital, when his mother's dying, what does the family say? Why'd you become a cop? You trying to prove something to the family? And I'm sure a black guy in Boston faces the same thing just as a black guy in New York City would face because of labels. And that's cop talk. Some people say, oh, that's racist. You say you're a black guy in Boston. No, it's not. It's not racist at all. That's reality. And that's the way people talk. That's real talk. You're right about that. And what I love about this is we're seeing the separation right now because one thing you nailed, which is absolutely right, and that's why this movie's so brilliant, is just seeing the separation between Satan and church and good and evil, right? Because Frank Costello, played by Jack Nicholson, he's Satan. He's anti-church. He's telling you all the negative things about church. There's even a part in the movie where he's completely disrespectful to the priest and to the nuns, right? That's his thought on the church, right? The church can't pay you. The church can't take care of you. Just as you said, I'm God. Listen to me. And you see the parallels, right? Right now, Leonardo DiCaprio and Matt Damon, they're at the same wavelength right now, entering the academy, but they go different paths. There's complete separation between the two because of their mindset, their upbringing, and what they could get out of the police department, what they could get out of the state troopers. So that's absolutely spot on. You're a black man in Boston. People are going to label you. They're going to hate on you. You're a sellout.
Yeah, and again, this is a movie about the Irish mafia. This is Boston, known white Irish Catholic, right? So he's kind of like, he's not digging them really, but he's just, they're kind of laughing at it. Like, what are you doing here? What are you doing in Boston with around all these Irish guys? What are you doing in the state troopers with all these Irish guys? Like, they're kind of making fun of the issue more than it's holding them back. I think, 100%. So they're in the academy. They do real well. Yeah, then it shows to the scene of the tragedy of life. And that's the other thing. So Matt Damon and Leonardo DiCaprio, both their characters are both so similar in the fact that there's tragedy, right? This one had no father. We don't know where his mother is. He's living with his grandmother. This kid, we come to find out, his father's dead. His mother's dying. He's taking care of his sick mother. He has an uncle who has a lot of money. He has access to a lot of money, but it's not what he's concerned with. He's not concerned with the money. He doesn't need to suck up to the family. He actually despises the uncle. And I think that was a great scene that you brought up where you said, what was it? You got something to prove to the family? And he goes, when you're talking about the family, you mean, do I have something to prove to you? And then he said to him, and then he's like, how much do you need for the funeral? And he goes, when my mother's dead, we have no more ties to each other. And you see him completely distance himself from money. And that shows his internals. It shows his moral path. It shows how his integrity is. Because, not to jump, but there is a line later on when Frank Costello starts to tell him a story about his father. And he starts to tell him, your father used to run around. He said, and then he's curious now because he wants to know about his father. And he says, my father never did anything with you? And he said, no, your father could have did stuff with us. But your father didn't want money. And you can't do anything with a man like that doesn't want money. And it kind of shows, like where he's at. And so like that's the other dichotomy there, is that they both deal with a lot of tragedy in their life. They're both susceptible to the evils and ills of life. Costigan could have easily been in a position he could have worked some accounting job or whatever the family business was in and sold himself out to his uncle to be around people he didn't want to be for money. But money wasn't important to him. And I think that's like something we get early on right from that scene, because that's the following scene after this police academy. This is a funny scene when they knock on the fireman too. What'd you think about that scene?
Oh, that scene is actually one of the best scenes. Hilarious. He's knocking on firemen. He's like, you firemen, a bunch of, I don't want to say the P word, first time you're getting P, the history of fire. It was hysterical. And you see that rivalry between firemen and cops, which is true, right? In a lot of places, there's a big rivalry between firemen and cops. For some NYPD, FDNY, there's a rivalry. Sometimes we come together. Unfortunately, we come together when there's deaths. But there is a rivalry. I think there's a healthy rivalry. But I think this movie is brilliant because I really believe that's the theme of the movie, is morality. And the morality is exactly there. Colin Sullivan could be sold out and manipulated for money and power. He was so desperate for money and power. And even though Billy Costigan had a rough childhood, he wasn't desperate for money because he had a conscience. He had a fear of consequence, and he had a conscience. I just want to give a couple of shout-outs here. John, we got a couple of people here. Sleepy Joe, good morning, my friend. 5:55, coffee and donuts, bright and early to the podcast. Happy Friday, Lieutenants. Shout out to Tom Donlan. Oh, wow. We remember Tom Donlan. I love it. Most insignificant police commissioner in NYPD history. Yes, Ed Caban, it must be thanking Tom Donlan right now. And to Pat the courtrooms, 3 hairs Hendry. Shout out to you, brother. And we got another one here. VSS Venturas, $5. Coffee and donuts. Here we go. How do you feel about westerns? The '60s were a gold mine for they make for good review material. Django, The Big Gun Down, Have Gun Will Travel. Love western movies. Love them. I love Magnificent Seven, The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. Some of my favorites. And my Visual Zone, $4.99. Thank you so much, brother, to the podcast Coffee Donuts. I know we're talking about movies, but let's talk about how fat Kaz's face has gotten. And his 5 o'clock shadow. Is he drinking too much? Poor guy. He must be going out with John Shell and Salty Dog. I don't know. And Sherry Sherry? Sherry says, yes, Eric, I think it's a healthy competition. Our society has taken away competition for several decades now, and we need it. Absolutely. We always need healthy competitions, healthy challenges. They're good. And John, you and I always talk about this, right? That's the masculinity that law enforcement needs. We need competition. We need challenges. If John and I are going to work out together, we're going to do far better than if we worked out alone. Because if I see John pushing a lot of weight, you know what? I got to push a lot of weight too. So in those healthy competition, healthy challenges, they make men, they make masculinity. This is a great scene. I think this really starts to open up the path that they're going in this movie. John, want to take it away?
Before we get in the scene, just real quick, because it's just fitting. Shout out to Mike Freed for sending this. Right now, breaking. It's very fitting for the movie that we're reviewing right here. Breaking: FBI Boston special agents have arrested a Boston city councilor on federal public corruption charges. Details to follow at a 9:30 a.m. press conference at the federal courthouse in Boston. Very fitting. Shout out. Thanks to Mike Freed. All right, yeah, let's get into the scene here. So let's get
shout out Mike Freed. Thank you, brother. Yeah, outstanding.
So all right, so now Colin graduates the police academy. He's signed to plainclothes right out of the gate. Why? Tells you that he knows someone. Is he the best in his group? Maybe, maybe not. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you're the best. If you don't have hooks, he goes to plainclothes right out of the gate. And you see at the graduation, you see Frank Costello and Frenchie driving around. They get him. They bring him in. He's now in the back of the car. And Costello tells him here, school's out. Right? Now it's time to put your big boy pants on. I groomed you for this moment. He's been grooming him since he's a little child. And he hands him a gift. But they never show you what the gift is. Right? He just gets a box. He opens the box. You don't know what's in the box. And he's like, wow, thanks, Frank. Wow. Like, what do you think that symbolized right there?
I think at Oliver 91 symbolized it perfect. You work for me now. That's exactly what it is. Now, listen, I groomed you. I took care of you. I fed you. We don't know, but I'm assuming I put clothes on you. I was like a father to you. Now it's time to earn. Now you take your place in the world. You work for me now. And I think at Oliver 91, you nailed it. That's exactly what it is. I don't know what's in the box, but it's definitely symbolic that, hey, whatever's in that box, you work for me now. Time to go out there and earn. School's out. I groomed you. You learned everything. You learned everything from the police department. Now it's your chance to go out, make that money, have some power, but know who's boss. Frank Costello.
Yeah, I mean, so I got to be honest. When I was watching it, it bothered me. I kept rewinding it. I'm like, what's in the box? What's in the box? I got to know what's in the box. And then I was like, you know what? I don't have to know what's in the box. It doesn't matter what's in the box. To me, this is the deal with the devil. This is the part where he sells his soul. Right? And that's exactly A.T. Oliver 100% nailed it. This is the deal with Faust, right? This is him signing his soul away right here. Because it doesn't matter what's in the box. You're taking the gift knowing that you're going to have to do whatever you're told in the future, right? You just made the deal with the devil. There's no going back after this point. He owns you. That's it. You got your mic off, Eric.
Oh, sorry. I said I think the acting by Matt Damon in this scene is brilliant because you could almost see the turmoil in his head where he looks like he's actually proud to become a state trooper. And at the same token, he's under the thumb of Frank Costello. And it looks like he's starting to have a dilemma in his own head, right? You see, he doesn't look so confident. He's kind of looking down at it. Thank you. But it looks like he's having that dilemma in his head, like where he's going. Because this would have been the opportunity to say, you know what, Frank, I appreciate everything you've done for me, but I can't go this route. I got to go this path. But he doesn't. He's weak. He's weak, and he allows to be under the thumb of Frank. This was the pinnacle moment where he had a decision to make of who he's going to be and which way he's going to go with his life. And I think after this, as we move forward in the movie, he starts to turn from that weak child under the thumb where he starts to become evil himself. And his morality completely is lost. My visual zone, $4.99, coffee and donuts. Thank you so much. Can't wait to see Denzel play Kaz in the new movie Skyline Justice about a chauffeur turned commissioner and his revolutionary drone crime fighting. Yeah, we'd love to see it too. Hey, listen, Scorsese, if you could get that movie, and then John and I could do a watch party on it. Tom, shout out to you. More coffee, more donuts. That's the part where he got vaccinated to work. Outstanding. But John, what do you think? Do you think that you kind of, I mean, for me, that his demeanor appears that this is the defining moment that he makes the decision if he's going to say this is enough for me or if he's going to become evil and go that route?
Oh, dude, I think you completely nailed it, bro. He's sitting there looking at the gift like, this is what I'm worth. This is what my soul's worth. Whatever it is. It could be a $5,000 Rolex. It could be a $20,000. It could be a $100,000 Rolex. It's whatever it is. He's like, oh, thanks, Frank. Right? This is what I'm worth. This is what I'm worth. This is the deal with the devil right here. It's like, it's simple. It does. And then so like I kind of got away from it, but for a while, I'm not gonna lie, it bothered me. I'm like, I need to know what's in that box. And then I think you're right. You don't need to know what's in the box. It doesn't matter. It matters that he signed the contract with the devil. You're 100% right. He is the dilemma. He is the point of no return, right? You're 100% right. He's conflicted. He could go either way here. He could tell Frank to go F himself at this point, right? Oh, you helped get me assigned to plain clothes? All right, screw you. What are you going to do for me now? What are you going to do? Tell him about the things I did when I was a kid? Nobody's going to care. You know? Nobody's going to care. Oh, really? I made it through the academy. I'm top of my class. Nobody's going to care. It's the things that you're going to do now that matter. And that's it right there. I think you nailed it, dude. 100%. He's completely conflicted. He doesn't want to do it. And he gives into the fear. And he goes forward onto the dark side. 100%.
Well, I think that this is reflective, honestly, John, of the mandate. Because this is a point where his fear is not of consequence. His fear is of letting Frank Costello down and not being a part of the crew. That's what his fear is at the point, right? Just the same thing as the mandate. Guys could have spoke out and said, you know what? I don't think this is right. But they didn't. They wanted to be part of the pack. So I think that this is kind of reflective of what's going on. That's why I believe that movies are comparative and they're kind of lifelike, right? And they get their things from real life, you know, and of course they make it more entertaining. But I do think that kind of assimilates to what happened with the mandate, what's happening right now when we talk about the chiefs of the upper echelon not speaking out what's going on, right? The fear of separating from that group. And that's why I have a problem with it. It takes strong men. It takes real morality to say, wait a minute, whoa. What's in that box is not important. But what's in that box is symbolic because exactly what you said, I think you nailed it. This is what I'm worth. And that's the dilemma. Do I take this gift? When I take this gift, does he own me? Do I want to live that life? Or is this the opportunity to close the box, right? That's what I think, John. That's what I think is symbolic. I can keep that box open and I'm evil and Frank Costello owns me, or I can close that box, not take that gift. You know what I think that's symbolic of? That's the first gift that he takes while he's a cop. Because now, if you're able to take that, just as Michael Dowd said, you're always winning. What else are you going to take? And I think that's where the symbolism comes.
No, I agree. A.T. Oliver says they would have killed him if he did that. I don't agree with you. You know, I grew up around some nefarious people. You know, I too, when I became a cop, was the first in my family to become a cop. And when I became a cop, a lot of people who liked me very much didn't like me anymore. So when I would go to the gym or I would show up at a club or something, I consistently would get, "Oh, I heard you became a pig now." And I would say, "Oh, it's better than being a fake tough guy your whole life, right? It's better to be a fake tough guy your whole life." And, you know, and consistently I had issues. I didn't want to work on Staten Island, but I got sent to Staten Island. My brother-in-law gave me advice: don't go work on Staten Island. You don't want to work where you live. I adhered to his advice. I filled out my form to go everywhere else but Staten Island, and sure enough, I went right to Staten Island. Went to the 120. Really wasn't my community. Then they sent me to, you know, it wasn't. I didn't live there. I lived far, so I didn't really know anyone on the 120. I didn't go to school in Mariners Harbor. I didn't really know anyone over there. I knew some kids in Park Hill because they went to my high school. But I didn't patrol Park Hill much, only every now and then. And I ran into kids I knew, but I really never had a problem with them. And I was a young cop. I didn't really know much either. I didn't know how to get involved, and I wasn't going to figure out crimes at that point. But then when I got sent out, I actually started to have to interact with some people who I grew up with: search warrants, arrests, street rips. People don't want to kill a cop, man. You know, I'm not saying it's not scary. I'm not saying that I'm not saying that they might not try. But you should have, at this point in society, the police are a very masculine entity. And they're not, the mafia criminals, the last thing they want to do is go after a cop at this point in history. I'm not saying how it is now, but they know the full weight of every investigative authority, every law enforcement agency will descend upon them and their organization. I think it's the last thing they'll do. I think it takes bravery and courage to stand up. I'm not saying he shouldn't have been afraid of them, but I don't think they would have ultimately killed him. What do you think, Eric?
No, I don't think that they would have killed him either. At that point, he didn't have enough dirt. He wasn't that delved into it. He didn't have enough dirt on the crew for them to actually want to kill him. They groomed him as a kid. Again, but it also, you know, it shows he really didn't have any love for him. He was using him. And Logic's finest labels it out perfect right here. So remember the end of the movie, Frank Costello had another mole in the force in case either guy didn't work out. He still had at least one. Yeah, he was using him. He was grooming him so that he could use him to his own benefit. But I don't think he would have killed him either because he didn't have any dirt on him. You know, like I said, whatever he was doing with him as a kid, it wouldn't even make a difference with the police department. It didn't matter. But now is when he said, school's out. You learned everything I taught you. You learned from the police department. Now go earn. That was a defining moment. But it just shows Frank Costello really didn't love him. He's not a son to him, right? Eventually we go on later on in the movie when he says, you know, like a son. Frank, like I was a son to you, when he realizes at the end of the movie that he's been used the whole time. So I think Logic's finest nailed it. He doesn't care about him. He's just another guy that could work for him.
Yeah, no, I agree. And Logic's finest said about the box scene, he doesn't agree either. He says that wasn't the deal with the devil. He realized Frank bought him years ago, but he never knew it. To walk away would be to admit that. That's also a good take. It's a fair take. You know, in my opinion, that's how I perceive it. You know what I mean? But I like how you think, and you know, I respect it 100%. All right, so then we go to the next scene. The next scene is Colin. Colin just gets assigned to Special Investigations Unit. He's not working with the undercovers or in the intelligence bureau part of it. He's in the investigative part of it. And so what the Special Investigation Unit is, it's a quasi internal affairs. It's a quasi internal affairs bureau, but it's overseeing not only criminal investigations, but it's like the top echelon of the police department. So how I would relate them is like the police commissioner's own investigative body, like something like a force investigation division, how they fall in the hierarchy. They're kind of above internal affairs, and they're kind of above all of the investigative authorities in the in this police department, in this state agency. So it's this quasi unit. So he gets assigned a detective there, and that's where we meet Captain Queen and Sergeant Diggum. What'd you think about this scene?
Oh, this scene is awesome because that's why I love. First of all, the character for Staff Sergeant Digman is awesome, right? His character is awesome. First of all, he's hysterical, right? He's that salty cop. He's actually really intelligent. He's a good cop, and he calls out the bullshit, right? He sees it right here. He's looking at him like, how did this kid rise up so quick? Who the hell do you know? Because you haven't made your bones yet, right? What does he tell him? He says, yeah, he says, oh, I rise fast. He goes, yeah, you're like a 12-year-old's, you know what? Because he's looking at him like, what the hell is this kid doing? So he already has a bad feeling about him, right? Who's this kid know that he's making it up this far? He's already rising, right? He's already going to plain clothes. He's brand new. So I think that it's an awesome scene. Abed, shout out to you, $4.99 to the podcast, coffee and donuts. Good AM, lieutenants and all. Denzel would be perfect to play Kazoo, crime fighter, but he'd have to put on a few hundred pounds and lose a ton of IQ points. I don't know if there's any IQ points left to lose. So, but yeah, listen, when we go back to this, we've all seen it, and this is right now nepotism, but nepotism through corruption. So Staff Sergeant Digman is looking at him like, how is this kid moving up already? Who does this kid know, right? And you can see already he's got a bad feeling. A great scene, outstanding. What do you think? You agree on that?
Wait, I'm sorry. I was reading something. Say it again. What would you ask me?
No, do you agree? My assessment, Staff Sergeant David's looking at him like he's an intelligent guy. He's kind of salty. He's funny, right?
100%. 100%. Yeah, I heard that part. 100%. But I agree with you 100% on that. He's looking at him like, who is this little weasel? Why is he up here? You know, like what's he doing here? He doesn't know anything. He doesn't have my experience. What'd you think about the intro to Dingham and Queenan? Is this a realistic scene? Is this a realistic interaction in your experience?
I mean, yes and no, right? Listen, you know, it's kind of like when you go into special operations or anti-crime, you sit with the CO and and sit with the SOL. That's what it kind of reminds me of. Like, listen, you're ready for this kid, you're ready to do this. You're going to work for us. They kind of motivate you, spruce you up. Don't really tell you what everything's about, right? But you're going to do this. And you're going to work for me. So I think it's funny. It's a little far-fetched for the movie, obviously for entertaining purposes, but it's also very lifelike. You can definitely see yourself bring a new cop or a young cop and go into the office with the CO and the SOL, because usually the SOL is the right-hand man to the CO. And like, all right, listen, kid, you're ready for anti-crime. You're going to go out there in plain clothes. You're going to go out there running and gunning. So, yeah, but I also see them looking at the kid like, because I've seen it on the job before where people have some real hooks and someone outranks the CO and sends some kid to the CO to put on their crime team. And the CO's like, I don't even know this kid. I didn't vet this kid. I didn't put him on. And yet the CO's got to put him on his team. You know exactly what I'm talking about, John. Plenty of chiefs have called commanders like, hey, listen, you're going to put this kid on your team. And I've seen it happen.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt. So now we get to the scene that they Matt Damon leaves, and you see again the degrees of separation, right? Because Matt Damon leaves, and I can't remember why I can't remember Leonardo DiCaprio's name in the movie. What's his name?
Billy Costigan.
Billy Costigan is sitting outside of the office, right? He's waiting. He's getting called in. He looks nervous. Again, he's getting called into Special Investigation Unit. He has no idea why. So Matt Damon walks out. He flirts with the girl in the front. He's like, yeah, whatever. And Costigan's sitting there. He looks at him, he's like, whatever. And now he gets called in. He's got to go in. And now he meets with Queenan and Dignam. And I just want to say one thing before you go on the scene is I do think that the interaction was very legitimate in the era that we came in the police department. I do. Because you had some funny guys like that, dude. You know, I mean, like you had some guys, they were rough around the edges. They said shit they shouldn't have said. Like to me, Dignam is like the salty desk sergeant, or he's the salty, seasoned anti-crime cop. He's the guy that's going to just say anything. And then Queenan is like the level-headed, older, executive, very knowledgeable, knows, even-keeled, wants to keep, you know, he's keeping the narrative. This guy could fly off the handle because he's so focused on things, and he's got a rough tongue, and he's rough around the edges. But there's a lot of people that I've encountered that I could relate both of these characters to. A lot.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it reminds me when we were rookies, right? When we came out and we had our mentors, which we talked about so many times. You know, they were funny, you know, they were salty, but they were knowledgeable, you know, and they abused you. You know, they made jokes and they abused you, but it was fun. And we learned so much from them. I mean, you and I talk about it all the time, right? I mean, to me, it reminds me a lot of Dennis Myra. Right? Dennis Myra was hilarious, and we learned so much from him, but he called you out on it, right? He told plenty of kids, like, dude, you're really not meant for this job. Now, I remember him plenty of times saying, this job's not for you. Or, you know, but at the same time, he would teach us, and he was funny. Like, listen, no, you don't know what's going on yet. You're brand new. So he called it like it is. I think it's hysterical. And Queen, exactly that, right? We've seen plenty of commanders like that who are knowledgeable. They know what they're doing. They've been around a long time. They got that salty cop next to them or that salty lieutenant, and they kind of like they kind of the yin and yang together. So yeah, it's hysterical, absolutely. So yeah, shout out to Dennis Myra for that. I mean, listen, learned a lot from the guy, but he made me laugh at the same time. And I love the fact that he called things out like, you don't know yet. You don't know what you're talking about. You'll see. You're brand new. So yeah, and I think that is a great moment, right? When Matt Damon as Colin Sullivan walks out, and that's where they cross paths at this point, right? The parallels are starting to separate between him and Billy Costigan. And you see it, right? Matt Damon is confident, right? He's got this in the bag. He's going into plain clothes. And yet, Billy Costigan, he's the one that's nervous. He's nervous because he's worried. What am I going in there for, right? Because he has a conscience, and he's afraid of consequence. He's normal. He's actually the one that fits being a cop. It's funny, they tell him, right, you're no cop, but he's actually the one who really is a cop.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, you know, a lot of this, like what starts to happen here is like this movie destroys the entire DEI movement. It destroys it, right? Because there's a quote from Jordan Peterson that I often go back to, and I say, there's more differences amongst groups than there is between groups, right? There's more differences amongst groups than there are in between. So if you take a male police officer and you compare them, there's less differences in that group. Now let's take two male white Irish Catholics from Boston, grew up in Southie, become cops, and the differences between them and the life experience between them, both suffered, both know tragedy, both know poverty, both know crime, both have been influenced in the same neighborhood by the same people, right? Because even at Costigan's mother's funeral, Costello sends the card, right? Something, and it's something about the departed on the card. I forget the exact verbiage, but whatever it is, it was something about he sends the card. So they're so close. They're so intertwined, yet there's so many differences amongst them. So now he's in the police department. He doesn't know anybody in this world. He's got nobody looking out for them. He's trying to find his own way in the world. He gets brought to SIU. It's like you getting called down to IB your first time or to CCRB your first time. You really don't know what to expect, right? I think this is scarier than going to CCRB. I really wasn't worried the first time because I was always like, I didn't do anything wrong, so I don't care, you know, but like, the IAB is intimidating because you don't really know. You're getting called in. You're like, oh my God. So he's kind of scared. He gets in there and they start questioning him. What do you think about this scene? Because this is one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
I wasn't worried about CCRB either towards the end of my career. And, I was getting interviewed constantly. And the interviews I had by the investigators from CCRB were about 4.5 hours long. I started getting overtime for going to CCRB. I got overtime plenty of times for going to CCRB. But yeah, this scene is awesome. I love this scene. First of all, this is where we really learned the character of Billy Costigan, right? At this point, we don't know that he's actually a double kid, right? He lived a rich family, but he also had a family in Southie. So, when he tells him he's a double kid, and he sits there and he finds out that they know a lot about him, they already did their homework and finding out all this information about him. So we really learn the character. We learn from Billy Costigan is super intelligent, right? He got a 1,400 on his SATs. He was able to, he's able to survive in any environment, right? He survived with a rich family. He had a deal with a rich family, and the way they acted. We learned the way they acted at the hospital. He had to deal with a family in Southie that was poor and actually involved in criminal activity. Right, he's torn between his father is doing the right thing, but he makes no money, and his uncle is loved by the mob because Uncle Jackie was the man. Right, he was out there. What does Mr. French say at the bar? I like this father, but I really like this Uncle Jackie. Jackie was the guy in the crew. So I think this is great. You really learn his character, and they already shown that, hey, we already did the investigation on you. We know who you are. And I think it's awesome. I think it's a great scene.
Yeah, and then I think the other reason I like this scene is I think a lot of times, and I think what's so shocking to the media and to critics and to all these academians and all these lawyers and everyone that listens to this show that's critical or not critical or just enjoys it, I think what's shocking to them is they're like, wow, cops think, cops know things, cops are well-read, and like when you hear this, like, so now Dignom's not a psychologist, and Dignom, and to me, is like the average guy, the average salty cop, hardworking cop. And I don't believe Dignam is well educated. He probably has an associate's degree. Probably needed to do what he needed to do. He was probably a bad kid in school. Got into fights. Not a terrible kid, but like the rest of us. A little rough kid. Grew up in Southie, but never really got caught up. Kind of stayed the right path, right? But he's smart. He's a psychologist. He could look at Billy Costigan and play right into him. And Billy Costigan, in my opinion, and it gets shown not millions of times, but it gets shown throughout the movie constantly, how socially smart he is. Another social genius, right? Because Billy Costigan could do the same exact thing. He could look at you, have a few words with you, and get into you, and not only get into you, but maneuver you and play with you. And now here's a guy who's not as smart, book smart. He's not as well read as Costigan, but he dives right into him. You had two different accents, didn't you, you little snake? Right? And he knew, and he was dead on, and you could tell just by Costigan's, the way he's sitting there, and it's eating him alive because he wants to punch Dignam in the face. Right? He's like, and he wants to, and he's like, he starts telling him about what's, most guys sign up for, like all this crazy stuff, but he's bringing it out of him. He knows that he knows him. He's like, I know you. Why do I know you? Because I am you. I know you. And I thought that was a brilliant scene. And then Billy Costigan pushes back. Families are always rising and falling in America, aren't they? And the captain's like, who said that? And he's like, it was Hawthorne.
Hawthorne.
It was Hawthorne. And then Dignam goes to him, what's the matter? You don't know any Shakespeare? So, like, you could tell he doesn't even know any of that stuff, but he's so intelligent socially because he's been on the street, because not only as a cop, as a kid, and he's very observant, that it doesn't matter. They're on the same playing field. They're on the same plane of reality, him, and he dug right into, he opened him right up. I thought it was such a brilliant scene. It shows just how smart cops are. Some cops, not all of them. Some cops are so smart.
You know, I'm glad that you said that because it solidifies and validates the observational skills that cops have. They're socially intelligent. They have emotional intelligence, right? And that's why I say sometimes the smartest people I've met in my life are not college educated, but they have life experience. And that's exactly that. It exemplifies the social intelligence of cops, the ability to make observations on people. So exactly that. If we could strip away the fact that he had a 1400 SAT, but they both have that social intelligence, that they can make those observations on people. And he said, I know who you are. It's exactly right. I know who you are. You can play the rich kid. You can play the tough kid. You have that social intelligence. You're so smart that you're able to play that, and you're able to be a chameleon. And that's why he would be the perfect undercover. And they picked the right kid. I mean, that was awesome. I mean, he really nailed it. And he showed the part of Damon. I agree with you. I think he shows that he's really not educated. He's not well-read, right? Oh, he goes, you don't know any Shakespeare? And meanwhile, he's quoting Hawthorne. And these are totally different works of art. But he's smart and he understands. He's self-read. He understands how intelligent he is and that he could play that role. He could play the role with the rich kid, but he could also probe Frank Costello because he has that social intelligence and he can deal with different walks of life. And they picked the right kid. I think that was brilliant. It was an awesome scene. And that's why he's telling him, you're really no cop because you're not just like every other cop. You're a special cop. You are that cop, that critical thinker. And I think, unfortunately, people have they're quite mistaken of the mindset and the critical thinking and the ability of cops. And that's, unfortunately, I think that's also because for most of our lives, cops, what do I always say? They're treated like children. They're supposed to be seen and not heard. And so they never understood the intellectual ability that cops have because you learn those observation skills. You know how to deal with people. Cops deal with people better than anyone else. I always say, especially the NYPD, the volume, we have the skills and the ability to actually move people without touching them. You've heard me say that before, and you just said it yourself. The ability to move people and manipulate people without even touching them because of those social skills.
Absolutely. So then they make them the offer. Do you want to be a cop or do you want to pretend to be a cop, right? And they reel them in. This, again, is crazy, right? They're going to wipe him from the records. They're going to throw him in jail. And he's going to go undercover in his neighborhood where he's from. And he's going to use his family ties to get in with this crew. Wild to me. There are people that do it. There are people that go undercover. I don't understand that. I just don't. It's not something I would ever do. There are people that do it. So to me, it's very legit because I've worked with people that have done similar things. I don't know what that is, but like he says, yes, I'm going to do that. Right. You're not a statey kid. You're a rocket scientist. You're not going to be you're
an astronaut.
You're an astronaut, kid, whatever it is. Yeah. I don't know. To me, this is where like it gets crazy. And I'm not saying it's not realistic. For me, I'm like, wow, somebody's going to do that. You're not even a cop. He has formal training, has 6 months of training in the academy, maybe. He's not even really a cop. And now he's going to go completely undercover. And what would you think about this? Like, like that he actually does it. Like, what's your analysis of why he does it? Because I don't know.
So I'm glad that you brought that up because what do they throw at him? And he doesn't do it for that reason. What do they throw at him? He says, listen, we have a job for you. He says, do it for me, right? Do it for me. I want you to go out there and be that double kid again. Do it again. Go out there and be that kid from Southie. Do it for me. He said, there's money in this operation. You remember that? He says, there's money in this operation, but he doesn't care about it. He's not even interested in money. So I think it's a great line. I think it's kind of overlooked in this movie, right? Because money is what has been driven for Colin Sullivan, right? Frank Costello throws money at him, and that's his power. And that's what he's weak to. He succumbed to money. And then, Captain Queen is telling him there's money in this operation. But he doesn't care about money. That's not what he's doing it for. He's doing it because of morality. He's like, you know what? And he's also doing, I think, payback for his father, right? Because his father was treated like crap because his father actually did the right thing. His father had a good job, not a good job, but his father had a legit job. His uncle Jackie was out there committing crime, and that's why he was loved. But his father had a legit job, and they're shitting on his father. So I think that's part of the reason why he takes that operation. Also, I think he also takes this job because he hates his rich family so much. He hates them. So now he gets to be a part of this other family, and it's a complete slap in the face to his rich, snotty family.
You know what? I think you know what, now that we're thinking about it and we're talking about it, I think that's how I look at the scene now. Like when he decides it's the ultimate, I'm getting away from my past totally. I'm removing myself from my rich family, but I'm also removing myself from Southie as well. I'm my own person. Like I'm completely removing myself from all of this. I am above all of them. They are not me. I am not them. Like I am going to completely distance myself from my entire past, which is clearly traumatic to him. He's clearly had a traumatic past and he's bothered by a lot of things that's happened. I think you 100%. I agree with you. So let's move to the next scene in this movie, which is here. They start talking about the microprocessors, right? They're working on this case about the microprocessors. FBI agent comes in. I think another great scene. There's so many great lines in there. They go through Costello's whole crew. There's Fitzy, right? There's Fitzy.
That's Delahunt.
Frenchie. And they go through all this stuff. And then the Fed walks in late, right? And then Dingham comes back in. I think the scene was hysterical. I think it was funny, but it kind of brings in context to the movie now, because also in this scene, they talk about Miles Kennefick, right? Miles Kennefick, how he ended up dead, and they relating him to the processors and all this stuff. And that comes into play later. So it's really like, it's a scene building upon the narrative and the storyline of what we're going to go into and where all this is going to play out on.
Yeah, spot on. I mean, the scene's hysterical, but the scene provides a fundamental background to show what this crew is involved in. The crew came out of Southie, the kind of crimes they're committing. All right, so they're trying to get the information on this, while Billy Koskin is the one that's actually going to probe Southie and get the real information of what's going on. So it's almost like these guys have their operation and they're just keeping them busy, because the real operation is really what's going on with Billy Koskin. And I think it's awesome, the interaction that he has with Elby, played by Alec Baldwin. Hysterical. He's like, hey, how you doing? I'm tired from effing your mother, or whatever the case is. But it's hysterical. It's just cop humor, but it's spot on in the sense that they're starting to do their investigation, while simultaneously the real investigation is what's going on with Dingham, Billy Koskin, and Captain Queen.
Yeah. And then we get back to Colin, Matt Damon's character. And you see he's getting a penthouse in Boston, overlooking the Boston Capitol. The real estate agent or broker is actually shocked by the fact that a police officer could even afford this apartment and living here, right? He's shocked by it, right? He's in a different class of people. And he's like, how the hell could he afford it? Because everyone knows what cops make. It doesn't matter. He's like, he corrects him. I'm a state police detective. He's like, yeah, whatever. Like, he's like, whatever. I'm making more money off of this deal than you're making in the year. Like, you know what I mean? This guy knows this. So I think this is another very symbolic scene. And to me, again, I think that he sold his soul. And, there was something somebody told me once. It was actually, he was a friar, the guy. And he said to me, and I'll never forget it. He said, you could have everything you want in this life. You just have to sell your soul for it. He's like, or you could fight and get it your own way. He goes, you could sell your soul. You could have it tomorrow. You want to be famous. You want to have all the women. You want to have all the money. You could do you could have it all. You just got to sell your soul. He'll give it to you all. And I think here it's showing that he got it all. He has what he wanted. He wanted money. He wanted status. He wanted power. And he was willing to do anything for it. And here he is. This apartment to me is the symbol of that.
This scene is brilliant. I mean, it's funny. I've watched this movie so many times. We've done our research on it for this podcast. But as we're talking about it, I'm starting to see more things that I didn't even realize before, and how brilliant this movie is, and how brilliant Martin Scorsese actually is putting this together. And so it's not just the movie lines, and it's not just the characters, but it's the scenes themselves that are brilliant. Because I think that window is symbolic of him looking at the entire Boston, but he's looking at Boston from higher up right now, right? He's higher class, he's higher up, which equivalent to power, and he's looking over at Boston. It's like, the world is yours, the world is mine. He doesn't have to be in Saudi. What does he tell him, that snooty realtor? Hey, listen, you purchased this place, you're upper class by Tuesday, So he's basically, listen, he's completely snooty. He's looking down. I'm like, hey, you're just a cop, right? Because that's what people do. They look at you like you're some type of peasant. I remember, it was so interesting, right? When I work in the Lower East Side, it was like we used to joke around, like, here we're peasants, right? Because in the Lower East Side, Avenue D, it's rough. You have housing, but you go over to First Avenue, and sometimes you have some, and in certain parts of the Lower East Side, you have some people that with extreme wealth, and like, wow, here people look at us like we're peasants. They look at us like you guys don't have real money. And yet, when I'm working the South Bronx or I'm working the 120, people looked at us like, oh, wow, these guys got good jobs. These guys have money. So it shows the relevance of different classes. Because in the Lower East Side, we were the peasants. We were second class. So I think that scene is brilliant and symbolic. I think that window is symbolic of it. And him saying, listen, and what does he say also? He's like, you're going to purchase this place? He's like, listen, give me that paper. I'll take it, right? He's showing the power. Like, listen, I'll take it. I got a co-signer. Who's this co-signer? His boss, Frank Costello. That's his co-signer. He's on the evil side of things. He sold himself out because that's what's important. He's high up in that building. He's upper class, and he's got power. Brilliant scene. Brilliant. The cinematography is absolutely spot on.
Ron asked, did you guys dig deep into this movie for today, or is this how you dissect all movies? Try to forget reality when watching movies and not look too deep into the meaning behind things. Lol, laugh out loud. This is how I watch movies. There's movies that I've gotten. You could ask my wife. We were sitting in Avatar. I was like, let's go. In the middle of the movie, I don't want to watch this no more. Let's go. And she's like, what the hell's your problem? I'm like, I don't want to watch this anymore. It's completely anti-American. They're going in. She's like, what the hell are you talking about? And I'm like, I'm like, you're not watching what I'm watching. And like, this is how I look at things when I see. I think, there are ways to look at, there are ways to read books, and there are ways to watch movies. Great cinema is very multi-layered. If we sat here, and maybe we will, again, we'll sit here and dissect The Godfather. I think people are going to be like, what the hell are you talking about? It's just the way people perceive things. I know Eric's a movie buff as well. This is how I look at movies. Like, I didn't really deep dive in this movie. I watched this movie several times prior. I watched it last night. These are thoughts and things I've always had watching them. But like I said earlier, the first time I watched it, I didn't catch what I know now. And then obviously, as I grow in my faith and as I grow as an adult, I see things more and more. And yeah, I mean, I tend to go back to the older movies. Scorsese's movies have a lot in the background. They're great. Francis Ford Coppola too. So yeah, I mean, for me, this is how I watch movies. Eric, what about you?
Yeah, this is why I like drama. This is my favorite movies are definitely in the drama category because of that reason. I like to dissect it and actually think about what was the, why did they place the actors in this position? Who's the antagonist? Who's the protagonist? So, that's why I enjoy movies. For me, that's the entertainment, is actually dissecting the movie and figuring out what was it about. And is it actually lifelike? Is it far-fetched, or is it just entertainment? So for me, I love to break movies down in that sense, and I enjoy it. And I think the more that you break down a movie, you realize the intelligence and the brilliance behind a movie. And you actually, I think, get more of an affinity and respect for Martin Scorsese and for the actors and the ability that they make this lifelike. And the lines are so brilliant, and it is lifelike. You could watch this movie and say, wow, I could see myself as Billy Costigan, or I could see myself as Dingman. I can see myself, working on the job, and these jokes and the good humor. Definitely, I think we could all see ourselves, especially if you were active or retired in law enforcement. You could see this environment and assimilate to yours. And to me, it's like, I think we talked about this. Maybe we didn't, but to me, it's like a song, right? When you listen to a song, I think when you're happy, sometimes you just listen to the beat. But if you're sad and you're having a bad day, you actually listen to the lyrics. And when you listen to the lyrics of a song, I think you actually enjoy a song better. When you know the lyrics to a song, I think you know it better. And I think it's the same thing with a movie, that if you actually dissect the movie and actually look to understand what the movie's about and the silver linings behind it, I think there's more entertainment in that when you actually break the movie down.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. It's like, to me, it's like the difference between just reading the words on the book that are in a book, or actually contemplating the words in the book, and like these quotes, I think about them, and not as in relation to the movie, just in relation to life. So that's just how I take it, and obviously Eric does too, because we didn't plan on really what we were gonna do. Originally we said we'll do 4 scenes each, and then I was like, you know what? We'll just walk through the movie. What's the big deal? And we did that literally at 8:00. We went live at 8:05. So, so it's not really, there's not too much research that's going into this. This is just us. We've watched the movie and we're going through it,
And I enjoy movies that have different interpretations. Like, for instance, the interpretation we heard earlier, I think it was from Logic's Finest, right? About a particular scene. I don't remember which scene we were talking about. And your interpretation was kind of similar, a little different. Mine was similar, a little different. That's the beauty of a good movie and a good film, right? Like, for instance, Once Upon a Time in America. You ever see that movie?
Yep.
And I think that movie there's like 50 different interpretations. The end of the movie, Maxie, played by James Woods, walks out from that wealthy compound, walks past a garbage compactor truck, and then he disappears off scene. And so it's left to interpretation. Did he jump in the compactor? Was the whole thing?
What movie are we doing here, guy? Come on,
No,
we could do this. We could do
I
this
know, but I'm just saying. Was the whole thing a dream? But the point is, it's open to interpretation. So that's my point. I won't get off too topic here. The way we're going right now, we could be here all day.
That's what I'm saying. You guys started to break down another movie. So then we move to the scene. Leo's getting ready. He goes right from here. He's in prison now. And in prison, you're going to get checked in prison. And you see that there's a scene when the guy comes up. He starts asking him, oh, you whatever Costigan's cousin? Yeah, it's my cousin. Yeah, he's not too smart. Nice kid, So he does well in prison, right? He's a rich kid. He has no problems in prison. He's not worried about it. They perceive him as one of them. That's it. He's a Southie. He's a white Irish Catholic from Southie Boston. Tough kid. I'm not messing with this kid. He's not messing with me. He's one of us. I'm one of them. And again, this shows the dichotomy between cops and criminals. It's very easy. You don't really know. Like, good cops, you don't really know what they are. You don't know. You're sitting at a poker table with a bunch of cops and a bunch of gangsters. You don't know who's who. You don't. Who's the bad guy? Who's the good guy? You don't know. Or are they all the same? And I think this scene, again, shows that, right? He's in there. They accept him as their own, and he goes right from that to shows up at his aunt's house in his cousin's house. What do you think about those scenes?
I think you're right. What's interesting about that is, you ever heard the term when people say, oh, that guy looks like a cop? Well, what does a cop really look like? What's the look of a cop? Right? Because, doing jiu-jitsu all over the world, one thing I love about doing jiu-jitsu, when you go somewhere and you're training, especially no-gi, right? You're not wearing a gi with a belt. It's just it's a rash guard, which is a t-shirt and shorts, and you're wrestling with people you don't know. And sometimes, I go somewhere in the States and I'm wrestling with guys, and afterwards you start to introduce each other and you find out some guy's a cop. I had no idea the guy's a cop. No, he didn't look like a cop to me. Didn't sound like a cop. Or I find out some guy is a doctor, or some guy actually reformed his life. He did time. So you never know who's who. So that scene, absolutely. He shows his social and emotional intelligence. He's able to live with a rich family and live that lifestyle with those snooty people, but he's also able to fit in this tough environment because he's super smart, intelligent, and he's tough as well. So it goes hand in hand.
Yeah. So then he sits with his cousin, obviously. He shows his cousin he's one of him. He's back. He's got a little bit of money. He wants to make some money on the street. They start doing some deals on the street. He introduces him to Frenchie. Frenchie obviously knows Costigan's uncle, Jackie Costigan, one of the crew, right? And he introduces them. So now he's kind of assimilated back. It was in the paper that he was in jail. So it looks legit on its face. And then when he actually gets there, the kid's coming from Miles Kenefick's funeral, who they had just spoke about, right? They had just spoke that how Miles Kenefick was murdered, right? Now the cousin's coming from Miles Kenefick's funeral. It rolls into the next scene where now Matt Damon's character is going to interview Miles Kenefick's mother. But he obviously gave Costello the heads up, because as he's interviewing the mom here, and the mom's even saying, and it's showing the distrust in the community of police. And I think in any strong ethnic neighborhoods, Irish, Italian, Blacks, Dominican, Puerto Rican, in any strong ethnic neighborhood, especially during this time, there was always a distrust of the police, and there was more fear of the criminal element than there was of the police. So she's telling him, well, he must have did something wrong. He must have did something wrong. I don't know. And as she's saying that, because even if maybe they want to make sure that she knows that you're not telling anybody anything, Costello drives by as the interview's going and they wave, right? And, so it shows like the overall corruption in the system and the distrust the community has and should have.
Yeah, I think it's a start, right? Because she doesn't know that he's in with the crew with Frank Costello. She thinks he's just every other cop. And she's like, oh, he must have did something wrong. So he's like, so him committing a robbery wasn't wrong, And she's like, then when she sees Frenchie and Costello, she's like, get the F out of here. She knows not to talk to him. You don't talk to cops. And you got the crew and the criminals making sure, keep the community tight. Our band, shout out to you, Coffee and Donuts, $4.99. He says, apologies for intentionally trying, but failing miserably to ignore the spoilers. You guys really don't do anything half-assed, do you? Thank you so much, brother. I just want to say, just as John said before, we just said we're going to do a movie review. We didn't actually know exactly how we're going to play it out. But hey, it works out great. We both are self-read, educated, and we don't do anything half-assed. That's why we were successful in our police careers, and the police department slept on us, and we'll be successful in the afterlife in retirement.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and then we see he meets the psychologist. What's his face again, this kid? Whatever his name is. Colin. Colin meets the psychiatrist, the police psychiatrist. And he's smitten with her, obviously, and she likes him. And then that relationship starts to bud. She's like, I don't know what to make of her. I think she's like the ultimate goal for both of them, like to have a normal life, a normal perspective. I don't know what to make of her as a character, but that's how I see it. She's like the North Star, maybe, and like she's Matt Damon's chance of being normal and having a normal life and a family. And I think, and then we'll get into like Leo with that also, but I think it's the same. I think she's the North Star for both of them. And that's when both of these characters, you see like where they're at, right? Like you see where they're at.
Spot on. I think you nailed it. I think that's exactly what it is. I think that it's for both, right? For both lifestyles. For Colin Sullivan, played by Matt Damon, and for Billy Costigan, played by Leonardo DiCaprio. She's the escape. if they get with her, she's the escape from reality of their lives at work and their lives outside their relationship with her name, and her character's name is Madeline. Their relationship with Madeline is the escape, and I agree, she's the North Star, and I definitely think that she is their sense of normalcy, right? The sense of a normal life, right? Yeah, at work I'm undercover. At work I'm a corrupt cop, but with Madeline, I have a real life.
Juju, welcome, my friend. I told you you'd be here today. I told you were lying. Thank you for joining us today. All right, so now we get to the next scene, and this is where Costigan, I think, really starts to separate himself from the police and really goes in depth. And this is how he's going to earn the respect, right? He gets into the fight at the bar, right? The guy, he goes in there, he asks him for the the cranberry juice, right? All that stuff happened already, right? So they already see he's violent. He's just like one of them. He's got issues like the rest of them. And now here you get two Italians from from Providence, right? Providence is right. Providence is the Italian part of Boston where they're all there's like an Italian mafia end of it, right? But here's the dichotomy. So now they're in Costello's neighborhood trying to shake down stores. Funny scene, great lines in the scene, I think hysterical. And then Costigan actually assaults them, beats the crap out of them, and now really brings himself on the face of the underworld because he pits himself against the Italian mafia at this point. And at this point, he's still not really part of Costello's crew.
Yeah, it was brilliant. That's his social and his emotional intelligence, right? He's tough. He's gritty. He knows how to survive with this rich family, but he knows how to get in to this crew. He knows what they're going to like, right? They're on odds. They're on outs with Providence, Rhode Island, with Italians. So he whoops their asses, and that's his way in. That's his way in of having a conversation with Frank Costello, with Mr. French. That's his way in, right? He pits himself against them, right? He puts himself in a position where the Italians can come after him now, right? Because he's not a cop. He's undercover. No one knows who he is right now. So he really put himself in a precarious position. Brilliant, brilliant scene to actually segue into how he's going to get into the mob. Because just like you said, he's not in yet. He's not in yet. But this is the scene where he gets himself in.
Yeah, and this is it. And now Costello's like, who the hell is this kid? This is Jackie Costigan's nephew? Bring him in here. I want to see him. And now he has a cast because he broke his hand, legitimately broke his hand. And Costello calls him in. And they're going to see if he's a cop or he's not a cop. So Frenchie and Costello are going to test him. How afraid is he? How legit he is? And they're going to search him for wires. And this is where, I think this is exactly where they now perceive him. The upper echelon of the corruption, the criminal underworld, the devil per se, sees him as one of them. This kid has potential. We could use him.
You nailed it. That's a line right there. Here's another guy we could use, right? We got someone in the police. We got Colin Sullivan. We're using him. He's in the police. Not only at this point in the movie, but they have someone else in the police also who's in uniform. But now we have this kid. We have this kid who was a cop in the academy, so he has some insight. He got kicked out. He did some time. He's one of us. Uncle Jackie was one of us. He's one of us. Now they're just vetting to make sure he's not a cop. But once they made the determination he's not a cop, he's in. He's one of them.
But they still have, like Costello's still a criminal, right? And he's been around for a long time. So he even says to him in that scene, I don't put it past somebody like Captain Queenan to send you to jail and put you undercover just to come after me. So, and it shows how intelligent he is too, that he's not fully bought into him. So even though this kid's been around for months, he's been doing dirt with his cousin, he now just put himself in danger with the Italian mafia. He still doesn't trust him. He just searched him for wires. He beat the crap out of him. Kid didn't flinch. He passed all his tests. and he brings him in again to his home. And he's testing him again. He has a severed hand of a male with a ring on him, and he's seeing his reaction to it. And clearly, Costigan's bothered by it, but he doesn't fold. And they're still bringing him in, and they're still molding him. They're like, yeah, is this kid? And they're still feeling him out. Let's see what he's got. Let's see what he's got. Are they going to make their move now? I have a severed hand of a man. Are they going to make their move now? And at this point, Costigan's sitting there with a wire in his boot. He's sitting there and he's wired, and they're listening. Dingham and Queenan are listening to this conversation.
Yeah, no, absolutely nailed it, right? He put himself in a position where he's, again, as I said earlier, he's not a cop right now. He's undercover. No one knows who he is. And he put himself where he's on the outs, where the Italian mafia is going to come back and look to kill him. And now he's trying to work himself into the Irish mob here. And right at this point, he's not completely vetted yet. They're starting to feel like this kid has potential, but also in the back of his mind, he knows Captain Queenan has a hard on for him and wants to get him. And he's smart. He's smart to think that there is a possibility that the police department would take it that far. So what we know is that Billy Costigan has not gained his trust yet. He sees the potential in him. He knows the background of Uncle Jackie. He knows that he was fighting with the Italian mafia, but at this point, he doesn't have his full trust yet. And that's why it's so brilliant, right? He's a strong kid. He's a tough kid. He's his emotional and social intelligence. Because what does he say later on in the movie? Later on in the movie, he says, we know one thing he learned about himself. His hand doesn't shake. He can handle pressure. He's pressure tested. He grew up with a rich family and grew up with a family in Saudi. He was pressure tested. He can deal with all walks of life. His hand doesn't shake.
Yeah. And so they go further, right? And now here's the scene again where it shows you the dichotomy between good and evil, right? Because in this scene, Costello's egging on a bunch of priests and a nun that he had sexual relationships with prior, and he actually draws a picture of what he has done with this nun in the past, and he gives it to the priest, and he's fighting with the priest. But as he's sitting there, and now I don't think Costello could ever fully trust anyone, and that's the thing. He can never fully trust you. But I think at this point, this is as close as anyone's been to him or could be to him at this point in the scene in the movie, and Costigan's there with him. And it's a weird scene because he goes. You remember when Colin, Matt Damon's character, graduates the police academy, he tells him school's out. School's out. And now he's sitting there and he's kind of like, I don't know what to do with this kid. I like this kid. I loved his uncle. I know his father. I know his whole family. And he goes to him, you ever think about going back to school? You ever think about going back to school? And he's like, kind of maybe wants to help him out to like, you know what? Maybe this isn't for you because I don't really want to end up killing you, and I might have to. I don't really want to end up having to use you and kill you, but I'm probably going to have to if you stick around me. So maybe you're going to go to school. And Costigan, what does he say to him? School's out. And he's like, you're an idiot. You're going to go the same path of the rest of them.
Spot on, brother. You nailed it. That's exactly what's going on. And I love the fact that they use that same line. This movie's brilliant, right? He tells him in the car, school's out. And now Billy Costigan is telling him school's out. And what's great about this is you start to see the relationship develop. And it appears to me that he likes, and he has an affinity much more for Billy Costigan than he actually has for Colin Sullivan. He doesn't respect Colin because Colin is weak. He can groom him. He can have Colin do whatever he wants to do. But Billy, the character of Billy Costigan is brilliant, right? He's tough. He can fit in with them, but he's also a little pushy. He pushes back. He has that, I don't give an F attitude, right? He doesn't care. And that's what he likes about him. I think Frank Costello sees himself in Billy Costigan. I think he sees Billy Costigan as a young Frank Costello. So that's why I think he grows a real affinity for him. And that's why he's kind of saying, like, I think you're right. Like, maybe I can put this kid in the right path because I like him. Because I don't want to have to be in a position one day where I have to take his life.
Yeah, and then a couple other scenes transpire, but then we get to here, and this is Fitzy. This is a member of Costello's crew, and he's sitting there, and he's in the interview room. He was just locked up for a suspended license, and it just happens to happen that they're about to hit the location that they're in bundling drugs, right? They're bundling drugs in a location. So this is where now Colin is in the point of no return already. I believe he was already in the point of no return, but this shows you how deep he is in now, right? He literally shuts off the camera that's required to be in there. His two guys are there. Now, his two guys aren't corrupted as far as he knows, right? They're not corrupt cops. They don't know what he is. The only person that knows that he's a dirty cop and an informant for Costello is him, right? He's the only person that knows that, him and Costello. Maybe other people in the underworld, Frenchie, but nobody else. Shuts the camera off. He takes a guy he's working with's phone. He doesn't use his phone. He's like, give me your phone real quick. He shuts it off. He walks in, pretends to be the lawyer, and he says, call your mother. Tell her you're not going to be home for dinner. And so this guy, he gives his one of his cops' phones, he gives to a perp to tip off Costello's crew. And he does it. He calls Frenchie. And he says, Mom, I'm not going to be home for dinner, Mom. And Frenchie already knows what's going on. He says, pack everything up, and they light the place on fire, and they bounce. Tip off. This, very realistic. I'm not going to go into all the different times that this happened, but this happens. This happens in policing. You're about to hit a door. You're about to go get, I don't know, let's say there were stolen cars all over this parking lot, and you going to hit a search warrant at the location the next day, and only you and your team members know about it. And what happens? You show up at the location the next morning, and guess what? None of the cars are there. And that's exactly what happened here. And this is when everyone says, wait a minute. Costello's got an in here. And what Dingham said in the original interview, one of the lines we skipped on is which is a great line, is, this ship's got more holes than the Iraqi Navy. You will never know the identity of my undercovers. We're out there. We're like Indians. You won't know our names. You'll never know them. And now they're like, holy crap. This guy's got good information out there. Credible information that's either going to get one of us killed, but is definitely foiling our plans.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I can actually correlate this to real life myself. Now, I'm not saying I'm not saying there was corruption, but when I would do search warrants, we used to put on the chain sheet on the roll call, any active or retired members, you know what I'm talking about, the chain sheet that's attached for the roll call for the desk sergeant to let any changes that are not on that roll call. So we would put on the chain sheet to make sure, to please get us a hospital car for a search warrant conducted at such location. And then we stopped doing that. Because a lot of times the target of our search warrant was not the location, not because there was corruption, maybe there was, but because cops talk, because they talk too much. And they sometimes, I've heard from some of my CIs that there were cops just having conversations with each other, that other perpetrators will listen to it. And that's how they got information, because cops talk. So when they said they have more leaks than the Iraqi Navy, I love that line because it's so true. And it's not all cops, but some cops, unfortunately, got diarrhea of the mouth, and they talk about stuff they shouldn't talk about. So we stopped putting that information about the search warrants, so it would have destroyed, our search warrant operation. And John, I'm sure that probably happened to you also. I know you were doing search warrants with the crime team, but it happened to me quite often.
Well, that's leak of information because, like you said, people got big mouths and they're nosy. I'm talking about straight corruption, though. I'm talking about straight, you're tipping off, yo, we're coming there tomorrow. And that's happened in the NYPD, and that continues to happen in the NYPD. And I think, like, there are scenes in this movie that are unrealistic, but I think the story as a whole, to me, is so realistic. And I think you could, even as Matt Damon, could rise to the level of a police commissioner. I mean, it's not far-fetched. Looked like it happened very recently to me under a certain mayor, this, like, to me, why, before we go further, is the basis of the movie real? Not the individual scenes, I'm going to say are not. There's some that you're going to say they're not so realistic. But is the individual basis of this movie real?
Oh, without a doubt, absolutely. I think that this movie is is actually spot on with what's going on right now. The potential corruption, the appearance of impropriety with the police department that we've seen with Ed Caban and under Mayor Eric Adams is clearly a reflection of this movie. Ed Caban grew up in the Bronx, right? These are the people that he continues to hang around with at Casa Fritos and these other locations, these other bars and restaurants. These grumblings about who he's been associated with his entire career has been full and well knowledge. I mean, I spoke to many cops like, oh, yeah, we know that guy's been hanging around with bums at different bars and restaurants for years. And then we're hearing about a potential corruption probe involving his brother. Absolutely. I think this is definitely lifelike. As you said, some of the scenes are more for entertainment, a little far-fetched, but as a whole, absolutely. Could someone be Colin Sullivan and have someone in their pocket so that they could get that nice apartment? Could someone live a double life and go undercover? Absolutely. This is definitely lifelike. And look, we see it with Mayor Eric Adams, right? He talks about the neighborhood he grew up in Queens. He talks about hanging around with Supreme and then changing his life and going a different route. So this is absolutely lifelike. This is playing out as we speak.
Yeah, absolutely. So then we flash over to this scene. This is the scene now. Again, the degrees of separation. They're so close, yet they don't even know each other, right? He's sitting with his girlfriend, and he actually passes them again in the hallway, and they don't even show you that. They actually pass each other again because in this scene, he says, who was that guy that was in here? That was your boyfriend? He's a cop, right? And she's like, how do you know? And he's like, bad sense of dress, air of scumbag, sense of like I'm better than people, and I think this is brilliant. That was like a brilliant analysis on his part. And it's a brilliant scene because again, it shows, is he really a cop? It's kind of blur the line. Is he a cop now or is he a criminal? He's definitely not, in my opinion, he's definitely not a cop here. He's way closer to a criminal, and he distances himself from the actual police because he tells you exactly what he thinks about most cops. And I'm not them. That's not me. I don't have that bad sense of dress and that air of scumbag about me, and he's sitting here and he gets right into her. He does exactly to her what Dingham did to him. He makes a statement and he goes, oh, so your father had a drinking problem? And she goes, why? Yours did? He goes, no. I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about you. And she's like, what the hell? And she's like, we're not talking about me. We're talking about you, right? And then he starts to ask for drugs. And she rightfully so is questioning about it, but it's because he's starting to fray. His nerves are starting to get the best of him. His conscience is starting to eat him. Matt Damon's conscience is also starting to eat him, right? He starts having ED, right? Not EDM, but he starts having erectile dysfunction. That scene already happens. So both of their consciences are eating them for different reasons. They're both under severe pressure. And now he's asking for drugs, and he completely manipulates her into giving it to him. And I think it was such a brilliant line when he says, I'm asking you for this. You're going to give me 2 pills? You might as well just give me a bottle of scotch and a handgun. I'll go blow my brains out. And, or send me out to go do smack. And he walks out. He's like, screw you. And he walks out. And she follows him.
Yeah, this scene is absolutely brilliant. And I think that's what's happening right here. The walls are starting to cave in for both characters. The walls are caving in on Colin Sullivan, right? Because he's so embedded into the police department, he can't get himself out right now. He can't even get away from his opportunity to get away from Frank Costello was that moment in the car when he opened that box. That's why I think it's symbolic. He could have opened that box and stay in that world, or keep that box closed and move on. And now for Billy Koskin, I think it's at the point where he has a dilemma. Is he really a cop, or is he actually part of this crew now? And that's why I think he says, I'm not them. He's looking at the cops saying, I'm not that guy. I don't have that sense of air of scumbag. He actually sees himself assimilate more with Frank Costello's crew, and he doesn't see them as scumbags as much as he does see the cops, because he thinks that at least the relationship that he has with them is more real than what he would have with the cops at that point. And that's the way that I see it. And I think that's why it's brilliant. And there's different interpretations, and you can even twist it, manipulate that. And the fact that his social intelligence, his ability to have observation skills, and his ability to have relationships with people on different levels, especially with the psychiatrist, is brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was a brilliant, brilliant scene. And it really goes into the whole psychoanalysis thing. And again, shows just how smart a lot of people are. And like, I don't think that Costigan's intelligence is from his book smarts either. He's very book smart, but his social intelligence, is his ability to maneuver and manipulate people, is really there. And he does it to a very well-educated person. And she follows him. And then he actually reels her in. He's like, all right, what are you doing now? You want to go out for coffee? And she goes out for coffee with him. You know, a pretty wild scene. I think that was another one of my favorite scenes in the movie. But he's snapping, right? Next scene, they're under a bridge, and he's meeting with Dignam and Queenan and Captain Queenan, right? And him and Dignam start getting into fistfights because he's starting to snap. He's like, I can't do this anymore. He's like, why aren't you locking up Costello? Like, this guy is a legit murderer. You don't know what it's like. You don't know what it's like. And they don't, because nobody would know that unless you were in those scenarios, right? Nobody can know what he's going through at this time. No one on earth. No one on earth has ever experienced what Costigan is experiencing, what he's going through, and the type of thing he's doing. It's unique to him and him only.
Yeah, absolutely, because he doesn't even know who he is anymore at this point. You know, at this point, he's so distant from the police department. He is one of Frank Costello's crew, right? That's who he is right now, because that's where his identity is. And at this point, he wants to get out of it, and he can't. That's why he's saying, when are you going to lock these guys up? I mean, he committed a murder, right? As he says, he committed murder. When are you going to lock these guys up? Because he needs to get out of this, and he can't get out of that environment until they lock him up, right? Because his life is on the line. He's on the outs already with the Italians. He's in with the Irish mob. He needs that protection. So at this point, he's like, listen, you got to make these arrests. That's his way out. He wants to get out. His moral compass is telling him that he's so delved in, and eventually, I'm sure he sees that they're going to want him to commit a crime, maybe even take the life of another. So he knows, you got to make these arrests to get me out of this. And that's why I think it's a cry for help.
Yeah. 100%. It's 100% a cry for help. He's completely breaking down now. You see where he takes the Oxycontins that she gives him. Very highly addictive drug. We've seen 1 million people lose their lives over it. And, not only does he take one, but he pops like 3 or 4 when he gets home. So it shows like how he's breaking. Then it goes again. Now they already know they got leaks. And they already know they got leaks. They don't know where it's coming from totally. But Dignam knows they have a leak. He tells him in the car at that scene that they have a leak, right? He tells him, he goes, listen, you got to be really careful. You got to keep your ears open. We really feel like there's a leak here. And now they're going to make the deal for the microprocessors, right? They're going to make the deal for the microprocessors. And as that's happening, Colin walks in and he tips Costello off. And Costello's so bold, he just goes through with the deal anyway. He don't even care. He's so bold. And then it turns out that the camera guy put it in the wrong place. And Dignam has a famous line in the movie. He starts yelling at the camera guy. And he's like, he's the guy goes to him, who are you? He's like, I'm the guy that does his job. You must be the other guy. And I think that's a famous quote. And I think cops use that quote early and often all the time.
I think that's the best line ever. I said that earlier, and you said there's just too many quotes to even keep track of. That's the best line in the movie, because it's exactly that. We know that Why is that? Because in the police department for the NYPD, I can speak of because that's where we worked. And also, I'm sure other law enforcement agencies are the same. 10% of the guys are doing 90% of the work. And that's what he's saying. I'm the guy that does his job. What are you doing? Maybe you should do your job too. And that's what he's saying here. John, am I right? 10% of the job always did 90% of the work. It's unfortunate. There's a lot of empty suits. There's some great, fantastic cops, but there are empty suits also.
Oh, 100%. You know, and they relate to that a lot in the movie, a lot in these scenes. Oh, you're a worker. I know you're a worker, right? Like, you know, you're different. Like you're in the top tier. You're a worker. That's what that means. And like, I think that you see in all police departments, like people differentiate who's a cop, who's a worker, right? That guy's a worker. Like that guy, you know what I mean? Like, so I think you see that here. And then the whole thing gets screwed up. They get nothing on video. They don't even know what happened. And the captain flips out and starts punching someone in the face, right? And it kind of goes by the wayside and it's no big deal. And we related that to when the police commissioner got attacked by his deputy commissioner of public information and chief of staff. And we said, like, it didn't make sense at what happened. Like in this scene, at this moment in time, you're a cop and there's a physical altercation that happens. I'm sorry. Like, let's just wrap it up and forget it. Let's just say that never happens again. Right. And I think, you know, things like this happen in high stress situations, especially around a group of alphas, high performing alphas that are solely focused on a mission. And it's just something that happened as a result. And it kind of goes by the wayside. And that's it. Unlike that other situation where nothing happened to them, but it should have because it was wrong. So I think, you know, that it showed another like real aspect of policing, I think, when he snaps out.
Absolutely. Listen, absolutely. We've seen it before. I've seen shoving matches before, but tensions are high. They're fighting over work. They're actually focused on the mission, and they're not in public. It's behind closed doors. You know, it's a little scuffle. It's over with. It's because they care about the mission. Yeah, listen, knock it off. You know, we break it up, take care of business, but tensions are high because they actually care about the mission. But what happened with Tariq Shepard and Tom Donlin is out in the public eye, and it's over whether someone should be in a pitch or not. It's absolutely ridiculous. That shows a complete lack of control with the police department, complete unprofessionalism, and absolutely just a complete disregard for rank structure, especially the police commissioner in public.
Yeah, 100%. And so the deal happens, the deal goes down, everybody escapes, they get nobody, they don't get anything on camera, they get nothing, whole thing's blown. DiCaprio knows the whole thing's blown. He's like, this is ridiculous. They have a rat. They have someone in your department that's leaking information, and they start to try to come up with ways that they're going to fish out who it is. At this time, girlfriend's moving in. She's moving in, and Costello calls. Costello calls his house, like the boss. Put Colin on, right? She's like, oh my God, what the hell? She gives him the phone. Now, Colin's outside. He's clearly not in charge of this conversation. He's getting yelled at like a child. And he's standing out there and he's trying to explain himself. And he tries to almost take a stance for a second, but he can't. He can't take the stance because Costello lets him know, you work for me. Don't you forget it. And he separates himself from him. You like your little girlfriend in there? You like living the way you live? You better do what the hell I tell you and never talk back to me ever again. I'm in charge. You are nothing. You work for me. And this is the scene now when it's completely Colin's gone. He's no longer Colin. He is Costello's little demon spawn. That's it. This is it. This is the final sale. It's over here.
Yeah, this is the scene where Colin realizes he owns him. He owns him because he tries to push back and he lets him know, right? Who's in charge? Who's got the money? And who's got the power? You like where you live? I can take that away from you. You like your little girlfriend? I can take that away too. And that's what he's letting him know. I have leverage and I have power over you. I own you. And it's this point that he realizes he's looking at his girlfriend. He's looking at his apartment, and he knows it's really not his because Frank Costello is the one in charge, and he's no longer his own man. He works with Frank, he owns him, and he's too far in, and he can't get out of it. And that's where we start to see the turning of the movie. It's absolutely an amazing scene right there. And that's why I say the cinematography is amazing. It says a lot. When he's looking through that glass, he's looking at his woman, and he's looking at his place. It's like, wow, this could be stripped away from me in a second. And I'm so far in. You know what? Maybe I shouldn't open that box. Maybe I shouldn't have taken that gift.
Yeah. And then here's the scene. It goes in, Queenan, and actually, as he hangs up the phone with Colin, Queenan and Dignam are right there, like tailing him. And they have a little interaction. And and that's another scene. I kind of skipped over that, but that's another scene where it again shows Costello representing the devil. Because Dignam and Queenan are talking to Costello, and they're kind of egging him on, like, we're gonna get you. And he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I have some little little Catholic virgin girls I have to go play with now." And him and his wife walk away, and they're walking into a church event, right? That they help sponsor probably. And there's these nice little young Catholic girls walking, and she's walking with them. And it's like, it just shows the real evil in them and in him, and the other representation of good and evil. And then it gets to this scene. And now I keep forgetting his name, but DiCaprio's character, Costigan is now, he's collecting money for Costello. He's going to, and Frenchie's outside lighting fireworks. And this guy says, "Why should I pay Costello? He's a Fed informant." And now he snaps Costello. He's like, "What the hell is this guy talking about?" But it all makes sense to him in that moment. He's like, this is why the cases keep getting made and they never happen, because this is what he's been thinking anyway. But now this guy just says it.
Yeah. By the way, shout out Patrick Jordan, our buddy, good friend here, chief from LA County. Says Jack Nicholson was great in this movie. He was fantastic. But so was Leonardo DiCaprio, and so was Matt Damon. What's so great about that is at that point he realizes he's in a world of shit. The Italians want to kill him. He's in the Irish mob, right? And at this point, he was crying for help. He wants all these arrests to be made so he can get out of this life. He's out committing small crimes with them right now so that he keeps earning their trust and to keep himself safe. By committing crimes with them actually keeps him safe because he's really in that Irish mob now. But he wants them to make arrests so he can get out of this life. But he can't get out of this life because Frank Costello is an FBI informant. So now he knows he's in a world of shit. He's on an island on his own because he's so far distant from the police department as an undercover. And now he's got no escape. This is where he realized, wow, I'm in a world of shit. And the walls are really caving in. The movie, the scenes are brilliant how they come together. And they really tell the story. And we see the tide starting to turn. And now it's at the point where Billy Costigan has to decide, is he going to continue to be an actual criminal? How is he going to get out of this? And that's really where the movie starts to turn.
Yeah, because now he starts to detach even from the police department and from law enforcement, right? Because now he's like, wait a minute. He goes to Queenan's house, right? And Queenan takes him in and they have dinner. And, you could tell he's completely disheveled because he trusts Queenan and he trusts Dignam. He doesn't like Dignam, but he trusts him. He knows he's legit. But he trusts them, but now he doesn't trust the system. He's like, this is why the cases don't get made. So this is where he really starts to turn and fray. And now he starts to even detach himself further from the police. Now he's not a criminal. He's an island on his own. He's completely an island on his own. And then you get to this theater scene. And again, highlights who Costello is. He's sitting there with two women. They look very devilish, very demon-like. He goes after the scene. He's using drugs. The women are using drugs. They have a sex scene. And then again, the symbology of the corruption, the symbology of the evil, the good versus evil, and how the evil infects everybody, and how the pressure is for the good to fight against evil. And we're seeing that happen with DiCaprio's character. And we're seeing, Jack Nicholson unbothered by any of this, unfazed by any of this. Yet he's destroying everyone around him. He's pulling the strings everywhere.
John, does that remind you of anybody? Someone that's pulling the strings, that puts people around in places and they all get caught up, and somehow that person never gets in trouble themselves and always looking out for themselves, and they're out partying and they're the ones that, and they actually have the power. Does that remind you of anybody?
You know, it's funny. Yeah, it actually does, because there's a guy who just said today that he hasn't ruled out not becoming a Republican. Who do you think that person is that says he hasn't ruled out? So just right now, he just said it. And all the Republicans are running around and they're so happy and they're embracing him with open arms. Who do you think that person is?
Now, listen, this is Eric Adams. This is classic. That's why movie is lifelike. This is classic Eric Adams right here. Everyone around him is getting caught up, and somehow he always gets his head above water. And that's the same thing with Frank Costello. All these people around him are committing crimes, and he's an FBI informant. He's an FBI informant. Patrick Jordan, shout out to you, said the movie took inspiration from the Winter Hill Gang and Whitey Bulger. Winter Hill corrupted the FBI, the state police, and Boston PD. Amazing story. Absolutely. I know some people say this is a remake of Infernal Affairs, but I think this is definitely a combination of Whitey Bulger, similar. But this is definitely, John, this is definitely present day lifelike of what's going on right now in New York City.
Well, the script itself actually says it's inspired by Internal Affairs. It actually says it. So the script itself says it. 100%. There is that dichotomy with Whitey Bulger there. I think Whitey Bulger's brother was like an FBI agent or a congressman or something. I forget what it was. He was a politician.
His brother was a politician.
His brother was a politician, and his good friend was an FBI agent. And he was an FBI informant. So there's that there, 100%. There's that dichotomy there. And I think Scorsese really puts the power of drama into it and really interjects good versus evil, God and the devil. He really interjects that into that story, and drama, as much of a drama that story is in itself, the actual story of Whitey Bulger, I think it's even darker here. It's wilder here. But yeah, definitely, I agree 100%. 100% is influenced by Whitey Bulger. That is Jack Nicholson's character is 100% inspired by him. Yeah, so that's definitely true.
Oh, listen, friends, listen to the podcast. Let us know if you like this. A fun Friday, just doing something different. Like, share, and subscribe. Share this out on X. If you like it, give us some feedback. And if you don't like it, be honest. Give us some feedback. We're trying different things, go on different topics. I think this is a lot of fun. I like it. I hope you like it. If not, give us your feedback. We're open to criticism. But like, share, and subscribe. Please check this out. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, I'm having fun. I don't think we ever really do. I think most things we do on here sometimes are like, a lot of people are gonna get mad, So it is what it is. That's just, it is what it is. If we could do it again. I'm having fun doing it. I think it's something that I do on my own by myself. So I enjoy doing this. So, and it seems like you do the similar.
I love it. I love it. That's why I'm so into movies. When I watch movies, I break it down, and I can tell you the scene, why the scene is a certain way, interpret it. I love things, like I said, Once Upon a Time in America. At the end, it's open to interpretation of what you think the movie ending is. I enjoy those type of endings. So, everyone has their own opinion and their own perspective, their own observations. I think it's great.
Yeah, sick. So, all right. So now he's real vulnerable. But he's, he tracks down the psychiatrist. He shows up at her apartment, and she's there because she kind of knows like something's off with Matt Damon. He's not right. He's not the guy for me. There's something off with him. I don't trust him. He's a young, healthy male, yet he's having erectile dysfunction. There's something I don't know about this guy. There's something he's hiding from me. I don't fully trust him. So she hadn't given up her apartment yet, even though she technically moved in with him. He shows up there, and there's a love scene, right? She like embraces him. She's like, "Oh my God, you're so vulnerable." What do you think this like represents here?
Yeah, I think it goes down to, I think it's perfect in the sense that they send him to the psychologist, and so she, as a psychologist, you would think that she has a good assessment and observation and she has good sense of emotional and social intelligence also, that she could see through people, right? Because she's a psychologist. And exactly, I think you nailed it, right? She never abandons her apartment, so she's not completely bought into her relationship. She likes Matt Damon. He's kind of charismatic. He swindled her, but exactly like I said, having problems in the bedroom. Where's the first place in a relationship? If there's a problem, where is it noticed? It's noticed in the bedroom. So she knows right away something's wrong. She's got a young, healthy male who's really into her. Something's wrong. She doesn't completely trust him. He's having conversations. He has to go out on the balcony to have the conversation, not in a presence. So she hasn't completely abandoned her apartment. And she obviously sees something in Billy Kosky, and she sees something she likes, and she sees the good in him. He's supposedly a maniac. He's fighting all the time. He wants these drugs, but she sees the good in him, and actually, she sees herself more with him. But obviously, she's in a dilemma right now where she's in this relationship. But I think she sees the good in him.
Yeah, no, I think so too. Like I said, I think she's the North Star for both of them. And I think when you look at it right on its face, it just shows the complexities of humanity. Because by all means, you would think that the person that a female should be attracted to is Matt Damon's character. He's a person of status. He appears to have wealth. He lives in a penthouse. He's good looking. He has a job that gives him such status and clout. He's in with the in crowd. He's in with the circle. It's everything that you think a female should want. And then Leonardo DiCaprio is someone she perceives as an underworld criminal, a small-time petty thug who's been to jail, right, for nothing, violent tendencies, really doesn't have his life in order, probably doesn't have a pot to piss in. And yet, she's attracted to him because of who he is, because she's like, this person is real. This is a real person. I know this person. I feel comfortable around this person. I feel the warmth of this person. I feel close to this person, which is, again, the dichotomy between light and dark, good and evil. What the world perceives as great and attractive and welcoming, not necessarily what is actually good, warm, welcoming. And so, like, she now embraces him, and that is the embracement, I believe, of good.
Oh, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, because I think that she sees that on the surface, as you said, Matt Damon is like the shiny car, right? This is the guy she really should pick. He's got the great job. He's got the great apartment. He's got a nice appearance. Life seems to be going well for him. But she sees underneath that something's wrong. She sees that and she feels it. And he's not completely, he hasn't completely bought into her also because of the leverage Frank Costello has over him. And he might also keep himself a little distant from her. I also think he suffers from erectile dysfunction with her because he might have to distance himself a little bit with her to keep her safe because of his relationship with Frank Costello. These are just assumptions based on the movie. But I think on the surface, when it comes to Billy Kosky, he looks like a mess, right? He's some violent tendencies, he's getting in trouble, but she sees below that and she sees the real person and she sees something good. And for her, maybe as a psychologist, him getting to fights and all these actions is just acting out for stuff that's going on in his life, right? They don't really delve into that, these psychological sessions that they have, but we can make those assumptions also. Brilliant movie, to show the relationship, how it goes with her and these two men.
Yeah, Yvette says, believe me, I know his flaws. I see them. I accept them. And for him, that's unconditional love. And that's, and 100%. And I think your analysis with the erectile dysfunction is spot on, right? He can't fully embrace her because he's trying in a way to, like, I don't want anyone to really know anything about this. And I don't really even know if she should be in my life. I'm not really even deserving of this. So, I think that's a big thing, right? Because he was attracted to her right off the bat. I mean, she's an attractive woman in the movie. Leonardo DiCaprio is attracted to her. She's a person of status. She's smart. She's good looking. So yeah, I think that's a brilliant analysis. I honestly think that's what it is. I think that's exactly what it is he's doesn't want to fully embrace it, you know, and as well as he's conflicted and the stress he's dealing with, and he's completely consumed by Frank Costello. He's completely consumed by him.
Yeah, absolutely. That's his real life. His real life. His boss, his father, the one that has control of him is Frank Costello, and he knows it, and he can't have that complete escape. She is that escape for both of them, but he can't have that complete escape because he's completely under the thumb of Frank Costello. Couldn't break away.
Yeah. So now DiCaprio starts to tail Costello because he's like, I want to see what this guy does and who he's talking to. And he meets with someone. And in my opinion, Costigan knows who it is, knows it's a cop, knows he's meeting with a state trooper, but he doesn't know who he is, right? Because although they've crossed paths so many times, although it looks familiar to him in the hat and the movement and the walk, it could be any cop, but it's somebody in that institution. And I think he knows immediately upon seeing them interact, oh my God, this person's a cop. Oh my God, he's meeting with a cop right now in this porn theater, and he begins to tail him. What do you think about that scene before we get into that?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. Absolutely, that's what it is. We talked about what's a cop, right? And there are stereotypes, right? There is some stereotypes for a cop. A hat on, walking a certain way, such a cockiness, right? He talks about that, right? When he walked when they crossed paths at the psychologist, he saw that sense of air of scumbag, he said, and he sees that also. He can't see Matt Damon's face, but he sees it from the back with the hat. So he has that cop walk, that cop appearance that he was talking about. Absolutely spot on.
Yeah, so they break off, and now Queenan tells him, make the arrest. He's tailing. So Costigan's tailing Colin, and he's just about to get up on him. Colin doesn't even know he's behind him yet, right? He doesn't even know he's in the alleyway right behind him. And boom, as fate would have it, either Dignam or Queenan text Costigan and say, make the arrest. But he has his ringer on, and it rings, and it startles them. And that's it. Now he knows he's being tailed. He's like, oh, shit. He breaks off, and they start to, and I don't think Colin really knows if it's a cop or if it's Costello having him killed at this point. I don't think he knows what's happening at this point anymore. He just knows somebody's after him, and he assumes danger, and he gets behind a truck with a knife, and he thinks the person comes walking up, and he stabs a Chinese, it appears to be like food delivery worker, and runs off. And Costigan tails him. He sees that he gets caught on the CCTV camera, but he has access to them. So he goes back later and starts to review the camera to scrub his own crimes, as well as to identify who it was that was actually following him, because he wants to see. And when he sees Costigan on the camera, it's again, I know this person, but I don't know who they are. Is that a cop? Is that a criminal? Doesn't really alleviate anything for him.
Oh, I think this is great. This is the point. I think the lines really blur at this point of who's the cop and who's the criminal. And their lives are on parallel right now. They go in two different directions, but they're on parallel in the sense that Billy Costigan is on outs, right? He's on the outs. He's distanced himself from the police system. He doesn't trust the system. He only trusts Queenan and Digman, but he doesn't trust the entire system. So he's on the outs with the police system. And he's also on the outs with Frank Costello and their crew, right? He's in there, but in his mind, he still hasn't become them. And Colin Sullivan, played by Matt Damon, he's on the outs with the cops too, because he's not really one of them. He's probed them, And now he might be on the outs with Frank Costello because Frank Costello let him know, hey, you like that girl? You like your apartment? It can take that away. So he doesn't know who he could trust anymore. So when he's being followed in that alley, I agree with you 100%. I think it's brilliant. That's what I thought of also. I think you're absolutely right, John, is that he doesn't know who's following him. He doesn't know if it's the police. He doesn't know if anyone knows he's corrupt. It could be Frank Costello's people. It could be someone sent to go after him. So at this point, they both, Colin Sullivan and Billy Koskin, both characters don't know who they could trust anymore. They both are on the outs.
Yep, 100%. And this is 100% where they meet again, right? Like 100%. They meet again. Now they're like intertwined. They're the same person again, right? They're like 100%. That's exactly what it is. You know, they don't know they're on an island of their own, both of them. They could only at this moment in time trust themselves. But now he's got to go sit with Costello again because Costello thinks he's a rat. And he sits with Costello. And I think here again, it comes back to the original line when you're, you know, they used to, what was it? What they used to tell us when I was a kid? They used to tell us when we're kids, we can become cops or criminals. But I'm saying to you, when you're facing a loaded gun, what's the difference? So now he's sitting there with these murderers. He's sitting there again with Costello and Frenchie, and he knows they'll snuff him out in a second if they think anything. And Costello actually points a gun at him, and he's completely unbothered by it. He doesn't even care anymore at this point because, and Costello says to him, like, what should I do? How should I? Now, not only is he trying to help the cops flush out who's the rat is and who's giving up information, he also gives Costello advice on how to flush out the rat in his crew, right? He's like, this is what you should do. And he tells Costello, you know, somebody wants to be you. And he's like, I don't want to be you. And Costello says the famous line, heavy is the head. Heavy is the head that wears the crown, right? Like nobody wants to be the king. But DiCaprio says to him, I could be you. And I don't think he's lying. And he's not even afraid. In the moment in time, he goes, ask me what you want to ask me, and I'll tell you. Ask me what you want to ask me, and I'll tell you. Because I think in that moment in time, if he would have asked him he was a cop, I think he would have told him.
Yeah, you nailed it. I think at this point, he hit the crossroads of his life where he doesn't want to play pretend anymore, right? He doesn't want to have to play pretend with the rich family, play pretend with the Southie. No longer does he identify himself as part of this crew, as a cop. He identifies himself as his own person. And at this point, he's been through so much peril in his life, he's not afraid anymore. He's not afraid. He's had a fight with the Italians. His life has been on the line. He's fighting with Digman. You know, he doesn't know who to trust. He's following Matt Damon. He could be killed by this Irish mob. So at this point, he's been through it all. He's sat 4 months in jail. So at this point, when he says, you know, later on in the movie, his hand doesn't shake, that's what I don't think he's scared anymore. At this point, I think he just wants to, even if it's an opportunity to oust himself as him, it's a moment of clarity. So I agree. I think you nailed it. I think that's absolutely what's going on here. At the point, like, you know what? It's almost like he wants it to. Ask me anything, and I'll tell you. It was just that brief moment where he just, you know, he's rising above that fear. And
yeah, and I think at a moment it would like be just a release for him to be done with this. Like I don't even care.
Absolutely,
I don't even care anymore. Like this is ridiculous. And Logic's Finest says, John, this is the descent into hell for everyone. Dante's Inferno, another biblical reference. True, very true. The dark scene with Costello in the red. Now they're chasing each other through. They come out of the porn thing. They're chasing each other through the scene. Very true. Everybody's in hell right now. Even the people that are trying to fight against the evil, right? Everyone's descended into hell. Great reference, 100%. So they get into this, and again, Costello is like, kind of trusts him, right? Kind of trusts him again. He's like, you know, why'd you leave? Because there was a scene that we skipped where they had to sign in the paper, and the guy Fitzy couldn't remember citizen or citizens, how they spelled it. And they tell Leonardo DiCaprio, put your social security number and all this stuff down, and you're staying here. And he goes, I'm not staying here, bro. And he leaves. And that's when he meets with the psychiatrist. We kind of skipped over that. So now Costello's like, why'd you leave? And he's basically telling him, I left because I want to leave. You know what I mean? I'm not sitting there. I'm not one of your rats. You don't pay nobody. You're 70 years old. What are you doing this for? What are you doing this for, Frank? I don't understand. Because DiCaprio, as much as he knows that, as much as he knows, Costigan knows that Costello is a criminal, I don't think he understands how evil Costello truly is. And Costello tells him, he's like, Frank, you have money. What are you doing this for? And Frank tells him, I didn't need the money since I was robbing lunch money in the 4th grade. He goes, I didn't need the money then. I don't need the money now. You know, and so he's basically telling him exactly who he is. This is who I am. This is my world. I own it. I don't need the money. I don't do this for the money. This is me.
I think that he knows how dangerous he is and how evil he is. I do. I think he knows that. I just think that right now he doesn't have a home, right? We all need a home. We all need a place somewhere that we're comfortable. He doesn't have a home with the cops. He doesn't trust that system. He doesn't trust that crew completely. But when he does have these intimate conversations with Frank Costello, and I think he sees him as sort of as a father figure. Because when he has these conversations, he's able to strip away this whole environment and kind of put that aside about his whole criminality. And he's kind of a father figure. And I think he kind of sees like, maybe there is a little good to this guy left. Like, hey, why are you doing this? You've already made all this money, right? What is he? Frank tells him, I don't need money. I don't need women. I got it all in life. But he needs power. And that's what that's about. And I think that's, very smart on your part by saying that he sees himself, when I say him, Billy Costigan, as he could be in charge of a crew like that, because he has the ability to survive in all environments, and he has the intelligence and the skills and the social skills to be in that position, but he doesn't want to be. He wants to be his own man. He's a strong person. He's secure enough to be his own person. But I do think that he sees Frank Costello as sort of a father figure, even though he's in this world right now, because he has nobody. He lost his mother. He has a family he hates. His cousins are all a bunch of dummies that sell drugs. And he sees Frank Costello as, even though he's a criminal, but he's still a leader, and he's smart because Frank Costello is actually looking out for him. Like, hey, why don't you go to school? So he's actually looking out for him. So it's an odd relationship. I think that he knows he's a criminal, but he kind of puts that in the back of his mind.
Yeah, like he'll take the love wherever he could get it from. He's so in need of love that he has none around him that he'll even just take the little bit from the devil himself, right? And in the other end of it, he knows that he's on the same playing field as Frank. And he's probably actually believes he's smarter than him too. He probably thinks if he wants, he's like, I could take this guy out right now. I could take this guy out and run his whole crew and run circles around all of them. I could be this guy, but I don't want to be this guy. I don't want to be in any of this. I didn't even want to be with the rich crazies over there, but at least that was more normal. Yeah, I agree with you. So, and then if things can't go any worse, which they often do in life, right? He's in the height of it. Now, Colin's character gets promoted and gets putting in to find who's the leak in SIU and has full investigative authority over the entire bureau, meaning he could get access to find out who's the leak. That Billy Costigan is in fact undercover, and this scene is where Matt Damon, he's pressing Matt Damon for his undercovers, and he's like, I'm never giving it to you. You're never getting it. You're not getting it. Get out of my face.
Yeah, I think it's awesome because he already Staff Sergeant Damon, played by Mark Wahlberg, he doesn't like him. He already doesn't like Matt Damon. He doesn't like his character. He doesn't like that he got this position by nepotism. He doesn't like him. He looks down on him. He's not a cop that he likes. He doesn't trust him. He doesn't trust him at all. From day one, just the way he looks at him, he doesn't trust him. He's got a bad feeling about him. He's like, you will never find out. And that just shows he's a good cop. He doesn't trust him and he doesn't trust the entire system because some could be corrupt and some just talk. Just as he said, there's more leaks in the Iraqi Navy. So that's a fantastic scene. So even though he's a ball buster, he's actually a good person because he cares. He actually cares about Billy Costigan, but it's just his style, to be a ball buster.
Yeah. And so now he's in charge of this and he's contemplating. Now Matt Damon is now separating himself and he wants out. He made the deal with the devil, but he wants out. And he's like, how could I get myself out of this situation? Right? So he's sitting there. He's in bed with a beautiful woman. They should be enjoying life. They just moved in together. He should be tired from whatever they've been doing all night, right? And ready for rest and well rested, but he's not. He's not accomplished. He's not anything. He's sitting up there and he's contemplating, how did I get into this situation? And how do I get myself out of it? And what he starts to do is he starts to come up with a plan that he's going to tail Dingham and Captain Queenan, right? He's going to tail Queenan. He's going to put his guys on Queenan to find out who the undercover is. And then if he gets rid of the undercover, he's safe, right? He could maintain his career because they're getting too close to him. He can't go on like this, right? He just killed someone in an alleyway and he's a cop. So now he's sitting there and he's completely tormented. And he's like, how do I get out of this situation?
Well, I think at this point, he's now also a devil himself. He's actually fully evil at this point because now he only cares about himself, how to get out of this. He just killed somebody. He's got to figure out how to get out of this situation. That's why he's laying there. He's laying there with a beautiful woman. He should be hitting it all night. Excuse my, I'm saying, having a good time. But instead, he's laying there thinking about himself. How does he get out of this? Right? He even tells her in the scene, like, maybe they could try a different state. Maybe they could go to law school because he needs to get out of it. He needs to remove himself. He doesn't want to repent and do the right thing. He just wants to get out of it. He wants to get out of it. He wants to save face. So that's his plan, to find the undercover, to get himself out. He doesn't want to be under the thumb of Frank Costello anymore, but no longer is he good. He's completely evil.
Yeah. So now they're tailing Queenan, right? Him and Costigan are supposed to meet, right? They're supposed to meet there, but they're tailing him, right? And so Queenan's going up there. Nobody knows he's going there. Dingham doesn't know he's going there. And what happens is the scene gets completely crazy because not only is Queenan there, not only is DiCaprio going there to meet Queenan, the cops are there tailing him, and they're also sending Costello's people to get rid of both of them, right? So he's got it. So all worlds collide here, right? All worlds collide in this scene. This is probably my least favorite scene in the movie because it's so intense and it gets so crazy. It ends up with Queenan getting thrown off the roof. The cops saying, "What the hell's going on?" And I mean, it kind of leaves us like, where the hell is this going? The whole scene gets insane. Like, let's just talk about like what happens with Queenan at first, because I think this scene's just too deep to just break it down to like go over the whole overview of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we see in this scene, like, Captain Queenan, which we know from the beginning, he's a good guy. He cares about the mission, and he actually cares about Billy Costigan, right? He's actually willing to go out there by himself and try to help him and put himself in a vulnerable situation. And this is where the movie, everything starts to weave together. And as you said, it all collides. And at this point, we have no idea what's going to happen, right? And this is not a movie where good always trumps over evil. It takes twists and turns for the worst. And at this point, the worlds are really coming down, and Captain Queenan can't really help Billy Costigan anymore. This is gone far too long, and this mole that they can't find is getting too much information and really putting Billy Costigan in a bad spot.
Yeah. So now he has Costigan and Queenan on the roof. Costigan's breaking down, right? He's like, this is insane. Like, there's nothing here. Like, we're completely being controlled. Don't you see what's going on? Like everything's wrong. Anything that could have went wrong, like we have nobody to trust. I only trust you and Dingham, and that's it. And now they split. They're about to meet, and who comes up? Who starts coming up to get them? Costello's crew starts coming up to get them, right? And they split. And he's like, you get out of here, because he's not worried about it. Queen and like fatherly tells DiCaprio to get out of there, right? I'll protect you. Don't worry about it. Nobody's going to do anything to me, kind of thing, right? But that's not actually what happens. Right? Costello's crew gets him. They get Queen in, and they throw Queen in off the roof. When they throw Queen in off the roof, when they throw him off the roof, the cops that are in the 7 degrees of separation, the cops that are in Colin's crew witness it. And what does Colin tell him? Stand down. Stand down. Right? What do you think about that? And the fact that these cops, because as of now, they're cops. Like, they're following order from their boss. Do you think this is an order that any cop should follow?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Right. Well, at this point, they think that Captain Queen is the mole, right? They're going in there. They're sent by this devious animal at this point, right? He's become evil. At this point, he's completely evil. He's completely turned. And we're talking about Colin Sullivan. He sent them in there. But what do they hear? Right? They hear something's going on. Something came off the roof. It's their job to go protect life and figure out what's going on. But he tells them to stand down, right? And they know something's wrong, but they listen anyway. And sometimes we can't listen to everything. We actually have to question, right? The squeaky wheel gets the oil. We actually have to speak up. Why? Why are we standing down? And nobody asked, and they just followed orders. So, I mean, again, to show discipline, yes. But sometimes you have to ask those questions. Why? Why are we standing down? Something came off the roof. What's going on? They didn't ask those questions. So, it's a lot what we talk about. Cops weren't asking questions about the mandate. They let their brothers and sisters get fired, get terminated, have to resign, make a decision within 7 days. And those cops in that car right now know something's going on, and they don't take action because they're taking orders from their boss. But they're not taking the right orders.
But then they come out, and they're confronted with it. And they're like, oh, crap. And they get into a shootout, right? They get into a shootout with Costello's guys. So what happens, right? It happens like they don't know what to do. They're sitting on the edge. Costigan sees Queen and come off the roof. And now he's like, I'm screwed. I'm on my own. I don't even know where Dingham in. He's a maniac. He's a wild card. I don't even know how to get in touch with him. He's crazy. I don't know what he's going to do. He's like, his world's gone. So now he's off. He doesn't know if they know he was there. They don't. He doesn't know anything at this point. But a shootout occurs between Costello's guys and the cops now, right? All worlds collide. All worlds collide. They get the one guy out of there. Colin's sitting there, shuts the radio off. He's trying now he's really in the mix of it, and he knows something's going to peak, and he doesn't know what's going to happen. So he doubles down. I need to know who your undercovers were. We followed Queen in. And this is when they get into a fight and he gets put on leave, right? Dingham's out. So now nobody knows that DiCaprio's a cop. The only two people that knew that DiCaprio was a cop was Queenan and Dingham. And he wants the information from Dingham to get DiCaprio's information to find out who was working in Costello's crew. And Dingham refuses. He's like, absolutely not. I don't care. Take my career from me. You're not doing that. You're not doing that.
Well, this is where we see, right? It's kind of lifelike. It's relative to what's going on in the New York City Police Department. Digman is that guy I've been asking for with the upper echelon of the police department. Someone to speak out about the atrocities. Put aside your career. Put aside the amenities that you have and put morals above it and put what's important. And that was the part where you really like Digman at this point and love his character, because no matter what. He's not willing to give up his moral principles. He's not willing to put Billy Costigan in a dangerous spot to save his own career. If you have to put me on leave, so be it, because he's going to protect his identity, and that's what he does. He stands on moral principle. So it's impressive, and it's kind of reflective of what you're going through, right? You stood on moral principle, and so did he. I'm not giving up those identities. I don't care. I don't trust anybody here, and if I got to go on leave, so be it.
Yeah, and now he has to find out if they know it's him, and he goes right into the devil's den. He goes right into hell. I want to know what's going on. He rolls up. They find out. He finds out what's going on, and this is when he realizes that there's actually an agent inside of Costello's crew. Because as the guy's dying, and he knows he's dying, he said, "I gave you the wrong address, but you still showed up there. How did you know? Tell me why I didn't tell anybody. Tell me why I didn't tell anyone." And he basically tells him, "I'm like you. I knew you were undercover this whole time. I never gave you up." He basically tells him. So it's kind of like there is something right in the world. You know, it's kind of like a leveling off. Like, all right, maybe there's a hope. There's like a glimmer of hope here that there's some way that this ship could get righted. It's this guy dying. No one's ever going to even know, right? But federal agent working inside the crew. And he tells him, "Tell me why I didn't give you up. Tell me why I didn't tell you. You showed up. I gave you the wrong address."
Yeah, I think that's a great moment at this point, right? Because this is a point that where he really could be outed, and it's just the walls are just caving in, and Billy Costigan really is fighting for his life at this point. There's no one left. Captain Queen is dead. Digman's on leave. There's no one he can trust. Now this guy knows he's the rat, and at this point he needs him to die because he can't trust anything at this point. This is a scary point for him. The walls are caving in. His life is on the line. This is an extreme amount of danger at this point. That's why this movie is unbelievable, how everything is coming together, you know, and the twists and turns as we go forward. If we go forward, it's so shocking, but it tells an amazing story. And at this point, Colin Sullivan is just completely evil at this point. He's so far off the edge. He only cares about himself. No longer could he get out of this because he is evil now.
Yeah, and then now he goes after the devil himself. Right? He goes after Jack Nicholson, right? We're going to get this crew. They killed a cop, right? They shot a cop, you know? They shot at cops. They killed Queenan. So now the whole sting comes out, and it comes out. He meets Costello. It's just him and Costello. That's it. And what does he do? He kills the devil, right? He offs Costello. He's a hero. He's a hero. He becomes a hero in the movie. The bad guy, the instigator of all of this, he's going to walk away scot-free, becomes the complete hero. Gets away from all the corruption, all the bad things he did, and everything to this point worked in his favor. Everything. Everything. He actually gets rid of it. He kills Costello. He becomes a hero, right? I think he even gets a Medal of Valor for it.
Well, I just want to go over because we missed a couple of scenes, but that's okay because we're almost 3 hours into it. But when Billy Costigan actually finds out that Colin Sullivan's the mole, and he makes that arrest and he takes him down into the building, and he gets shot and killed by the other mole that Frank Costello has. At that point, I think that it's a sad part of the movie because he's the main character. He's the guy that you're rooting for. But I think it's also, at that point, it's kind of symbolic that he did escape from it. No longer was he with the cops. No longer was he with Frank Costello. He was his own man when he was making that arrest. He was his own man fighting good and evil. And the bottom line is that what happened in the dark, he was bringing to come to light. No matter what, he stood on moral principle. And that's why I think ultimately the theme of this movie is morality.
Yeah, but that happens. I think you actually went backwards, Eric. I'm still on track. I'm still on track here. So what happens is Costello gets killed. DiCaprio is trying to contact the police now, right? Because he doesn't know where Dignam is. So Colin still has the phone. So they actually make contact. They play phone games with each other. And now they
You're right.
they actually make contact. And what happens is they make contact here, and Colin tells Costigan, come in. We've been worried about you. We didn't know where you were. Come in. So he comes in, right? He comes into the police department, but they don't even know who he is, right? Some of the guys recognize him. They're like, oh, shit, I know you, all this stuff. He's like, yeah, it was me. I was undercover. But again, he's not restored. He technically is not restored. The only person that could restore him is Colin, right? That's the only person that could restore him. And they finally meet each other, right? And when they meet each other, what happens when they meet each other is Colin says, I'll be right back. I just got to get something. And when he gets back, he sees on Colin's desk the envelope that I forget whatever his guy's name was.
He wrote Citizens.
He wrote Citizens and he spelled it wrong.
Right.
And it's actually on his desk. And then he's like, holy shit. He's the rat. He's the leak, and he leaves.
Yeah, I mean, that was an amazing part of the movie, how they brought it in together. At that point, he knows he's the mole, right? Because he wrote it down, and he's actually laughing at the time, making fun of the guy for spelling Citizens wrong. I didn't spell Citizens wrong. And he had to cross it out, and it was exactly the same envelope. And it's at that point, he's like, I can't, I got to get out of here. I don't have, Captain Queen is dead. Digman's not here. No one knows I'm a cop, and this guy is the mole. He's in a bad spot, and now he has to get the hell out of there.
So he gets the hell out of here, and as he's telling him to wait, Colin's actually erasing his personnel file. So you'll never know he was an undercover, and they're just going to get him caught up in federal corruption charges with Costello's crew. They're just going to bring him in for the crimes that he's done. So he's actually erasing his file at that same time. So he's completely on his own. So he doesn't have anyone in the world now, right? He doesn't know where Dingham is. Queenan's dead. No one knows who he is. He knows the guy that's supposed to restore him was actually the rat. So he can't trust him. So he knows he's out, right? He's like, he's done. He's like, his career's over. There's no way he's going to be able to rectify the situation. So he goes to the only person he trusts, which is this female, and he gives her an envelope and says, listen, you're the only person I could trust in this world. Please hold on to this for me. If something happens, please release this to the press or whoever. Give this to whoever it's got to get. And she takes it.
Yeah, I think that's why it's amazing. Sometimes her character is kind of overlooked, but her character is so important at this point because, as you said, she was the North Star, right? She was the escape for Colin Sullivan, and she was also the escape for Billy Costigan, and she was also the only one that they could trust because she's outside that world. She's not a cop, and she's not a part of any crew. She's completely outside that world. So that was completely their escape. And that's the only person that he could trust, right? So he definitely has an affinity for her. He definitely has a love for her. And it's the only one he can trust. And he gives her that information. So he knows at this point, he probably can't make it out of it. That's why I'm saying at this point, it's sad he gets killed. But he knows at this point it's his last straw. He's on the outs with everyone. He's on an island completely alone. And, he's in extreme danger. But it's also death before dishonor.
Yeah. And then so she doesn't know what it is. She takes it. And then she finds out she's pregnant. And she embraces, Colin. And it's kind of weird because they really weren't having sexual relations. Maybe here and there. But, he's a little weirded out by it. But he doesn't think anything of it. She embraces him, and then afterwards, she finds a letter that Costigan had sent to Colin. And there's a CD in it. And she pops it in the CD player, and she listens to it. And it's a tape recording of Costello and Colin. And that's when she knows he's a dirty cop, and he was working with notorious underworld criminals. And that's the problems. And she distances herself. She's like, I'm out of here. This is horrible, And now I guess I would assume she's now looking for Costigan, but he's in the wind. Nobody's going to find him.
Yeah, and I think it's all symbolic, right? So he's right. They're not having sexual relations. He's suffering from erectile dysfunction, which is why he's kind of shocked himself, like she's pregnant. So they never tell you, but we can assume it's probably Billy Coskin's kid, which I think which is really brilliant in that movie because Billy Coskin eventually loses his life, and that's the way he his legacy moves on through her having a child, her having Billy's kid. I think that's I think that's kind of metaphoric.
Yep. And then so what happens is next is he actually tells what's his face? Costigan gets Colin, calls him, and now Colin knows he's in trouble, right? Because there's evidences out there and they have strong evidence against him. So he tells him, come meet me. Come meet me where you did Queenan, right? So they go back to the same place on the same roof. And now Costigan thinks that he's going to make the citizen's arrest, right? He thinks he's going to make the citizen's arrest. He thinks he's going to bring him in and be the hero. This is the way he sees it, right? This is the way he sees it. I'm actually going to get out of this situation. Here's the light at the end of the tunnel. And that's where it gets real crazy, right? He's taking him. They get into a fight. He has him. He knows he's done. What's his face? Matt Damon's just telling him, just shoot me. I'm done. Just shoot me. It's over. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. He doesn't know that his old academy buddy's on his way there, right? To come get him. And he's like, he's not going to kill him. He's like, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to bring him in. I'm going to bring him in. And he's trying to explain to his old academy buddy what's happening. But it's very hard to perceive at this point, right? Like, you have my boss. I don't know who you are. I know something weird happened. I don't know what happened, but you have my boss at gunpoint. And Costigan can't drop the gun, right? He's not going to drop the gun because he doesn't know that this guy's not dirty either. So he really doesn't know. He's on his own. He wants to get this guy into a situation where they're safe.
Yeah, I think it's great at this point because you can tell the character he's playing as the black cop. He's not confident that Colin Sullivan is trustworthy. He's not confident because he remembers what happened when he took his phone when Fitzy was arrested. So he does have some things in the back of his mind, but at the same time, he doesn't really know Billy Coskin well either. He's just his academy buddy. So he doesn't know who to trust. It's a great moment at that point. Like, what do you do? Because this guy is obviously, the black cop is trustworthy. But he's in a precarious position. He doesn't know who to trust. So it's he doesn't take that shot. He doesn't know what to do. And then you see Billy Coskin is trying to make that arrest. I don't think that he was making the arrest to be the hero. I think that arrest was his ability to get his life back. So, for him to say, well, listen, I was a cop. I was working for Queen. Here's the mole to bring everything together. I think at this point, I think he doesn't even care about being the hero. It's just getting his life back, having any chance of a life, which is why he left that information to Madeline, the psychiatrist, because he's got nothing left.
Yeah, and so what happens is I'm having a little problem with the movie, but so what happens is the other teammate now, he gets off the roof, he gets in the elevator, but the other teammate, the guy, he was like really just like a nobody in the movie. He kind of went to the academy with Colin. Now he's going down in the elevator, the black guy, right? So, but Colin and Costigan are going down in the elevator as well. So when Colin and Costigan are going down in the elevator, the other teammate arises and kills Costigan, right? Now, Costigan's old academy partner isn't corrupted. So he's like, wait, what the hell happened? And the old academy, and then they kill their teammate, right? Then the other guy kills his teammate. So now he's like, they actually kill him, and now he reveals this is the guy who kills both Costigan and Costigan's academy buddy. Right? You're a black guy in Boston. You're screwed here, right? And now he reveals to Matt Damon that he was also working with Costello. He was dirty the whole time as well. And to show how truly evil Matt Damon is at this point, he kills him so that he's the only witness left. He's the only one that could get me. And you see it right there. He's done. He kills him too. So now there's no one to tell this tale. He's completely scot-free. The evidence is out there, but he's not even worried about it because there's no one to tell the tale.
That's absolutely it. Spot on. That's why I said at that point, when he's laying in bed with his woman and he's laying there trying to figure out how to get out of this, that's where he really becomes, he's evil at that point. And at this point, he's completely evil. He is the devil, right? Because he killed Costello. Costello was the devil, but he's not the devil. And he's out for himself. And he's willing to take any life he can to save himself. He's completely crossed the other side. Him opening that box in the car, he's far beyond it. He's in that box. He lives in that box now. And that's his life. He's completely evil. It's all about him. How does he get out of it? And he's willing to take any extreme measures to save his own skin.
Yeah. And so what happens is it actually gets revealed somehow that Costigan was actually an undercover cop, right? And he died. So he gets a police funeral. Oh, I'm sorry. Colin reveals that Costigan was the undercover, right? Colin reveals that, and he paints his teammates out to be the dirty cop and himself out to be the hero. And that's how he's going away with this. So it gets revealed that he's there. The female psychiatrist knows the truth. So she's there, and she really realizes how good he was and why she loved him, and starts to believe that, you know what, I believe this is actually the father of my child from that one night that we spent together. And he wins the Medal of Valor for all of this. So it's like the ultimate, like the bad guy actually wins, right? The bad guy actually wins. And you're like, I can't believe this is how this movie's going to end. I just can't believe it, you know? And so like, what'd you think about that? Like the whole fact that the evil person actually prevails in the end.
Well, it's amazing, right? I think that we all have that affinity to want the good guy to win. At that point in the movie, like, oh my God, this is the evil guy that actually wins this, and then the good guy actually goes down. And you ask yourself, well, is it worth being the good guy? And I think it's amazing at this point that she knows, the woman knows that, you know, everything that she thought before, something was wrong with Collins. And she felt something good about Billy Costigan. You know, turns out she gets which we believe she's having a baby with the right guy. But it's just symbolic that, hey, it is death before dishonor. So, and his legacy goes on for the baby. So I think it's an amazing story. And I think that she really was the pinnacle point. She's the pinnacle part in the movie of she's that outside life. She's not part of that world. And she's the only link that knows what's going on. So is her life at risk at this point? You don't know. You know, they never tell you. But you have to think also maybe her life is at risk because that's the last link that knows. And he's so evil at this point. Would he take her life? And that's what I was thinking at this point. But it's you're also thinking, wow, could it really end at this point? And thank God it doesn't.
Yeah. And then he appears to be scot-free. He's setting up at his apartment, right? He's getting there. And who's waiting for him? In a Tyvek suit with plastic all around his apartment and with a firearm and a silencer? Dingham. Because Dingham knows what he always knew to be true. And I don't even believe that Dingham has the evidence. Costigan might have sent Dingham the evidence, but I don't think he needs it. I think he always knew that Matt Damon was the rat and that Matt Damon was working with him. He just couldn't prove it. He had nothing to prove it. So at the end, he sits there. Matt Damon walks in. Dingham doesn't say two words to him. He shoots him, kills him, and walks away. What do you think that represents at the end of the movie?
That represents exactly what we're talking about. Is that good trumps evil, that no matter what, good trumps evil, and the evil doesn't last, right? The evil will perish, and they will find their peril. And that's what happens. The good guy won. Thank God, right? And that's really, it comes down to morality. And, is it good to take someone's life? But Digman was the moral principle. He was the foundation that stood up for everyone. He was the good that trumped evil at the end. And I do And I think the assumption is there that Costigan gave him the evidence. I think the assumption is there. We can assume that in the movie. And this, I think, is such a great scene. It's so symbolic. You know, from the initial part of the apartment, when he gets the apartment, looking out the window, you're now upper class. You know, you don't realize you're so evil at this point. Think you're going to live this life. And I think that's the point. Evil doesn't last.
Yeah, so I think like all of it comes full circle again for me, because I think again when Dingham's there, like, does Dingham represent justice? He does. Does Dingham represent light? He does. Does Dingham represent good? He does. But I think, you know, again, that line rings back to me again. When I was a kid, they used to say we could become cops or we could become criminals. But what I'm saying to you, when you're facing a barrel of a loaded gun, what's the difference? And it really shows the line now, because is Dingham a criminal at this moment in time? He is. Dingham is murdering Colin. This is murder. It's not killing him. Colin is no threat to him at the moment. This is cold-blooded murder. So what is the difference between a cop and a criminal? And then the dichotomy of life, the rat at the penthouse apartment overlooking the Capitol, Boston's Capitol, is you could reach the highest levels in life, but you're still going to deal with the rats, and none of us are any different. And I think that is the whole tale for me, how it gets painted. We all tote the lines of good and evil. Some stay evil more and more. But I think at the end of the line, you know, I think that morally, I'm on the side of Dingham. I root for him. I actually hope he doesn't even get caught. But which I don't know is right or wrong, but I think it really brings that line true to me. And I think at the end of the day, life's very complicated. There's a lot of nuances. Is Dingham a cop or is he a criminal at that point?
Well, I think the entire movie comes together at this point, right? Exactly that line. Cop or criminal, what's the difference? And I think he's still a cop, but I think the bottom line is, I think it comes down to, are we all capable of violence? Are we all capable of taking extreme measures in life? And I think the answer is yes. I think evil is capable of violence, obviously, and so is good. Good people are capable of violence, and I think that it is a part of life. What I might say when I go out there and kill somebody, but it's also very symbolic that the good guy has to win in the end. That good has to trump evil, and we're all rooting for him because it was Colin's actions that led to the demise of Captain Queenan, that led to Digman having to leave the job, loss of life of Costigan, and a woman that with a baby that doesn't have a father. He was the cause of everything, and he put a stop to that. And unfortunately, it was violence that was necessary. And sometimes good, it's not only evil, but it's sometimes good that use violence and extreme measures. And I think that, that's what that scene is. Is he a criminal at this point? I don't know. The definite. I think he's still good. Is he a cop anymore? That's what I'm saying. No, he's not a cop anymore because he went to that edge. But is he a criminal? He's not a criminal.
Yeah. So shout out to Rafael Martinez, donated $5 to the podcast. In Internal Affairs, I never watched the movie. I'm gonna check it out. The Colin character got away with it. Interesting. But yeah, I mean, 100%. We don't know that he's not a cop anymore because he was on a leave. We don't know that technically Dingham doesn't go back to the department. I mean, we're all assuming it because the other guy turns out to be the poster child and become the hero, right? And he's high up. So we're assuming it, right? We're assuming that Dingham doesn't go back, but he may or may not have. But is he a cop at that moment? No. Is he a criminal at that moment? Yes. Is he morally doing the right thing? it's up for interpretation, right? I mean, it would be easy to say if Colin tried to kill him and then he killed him, right? It was easy, you know. Dingham's a hero. Dingham's a hero. But I don't know. When I look at it, I'm like, is Dingham really a hero at the end of the movie? I don't know, man. Life's complicated. Life's complicated, and I love the scene. I love how it ended, and I really just don't know what to make of it. I really don't. I mean, at the end of the day, I really gotta say it blurred the lines for me. Who's a cop and who's a criminal? And Costello's kind of right. When you're staring at the barrel of a gun, does it really matter? And how do you determine good and evil, and who determines it? And, you know, I'm going to say right now that Dingham was on the side of good, in my opinion, but he's very close to the line of evil also.
Absolutely. Well, I think, by the way, shout out to Tom, $1.99 coffee and donuts. Let's see which rats jump ship with your lawsuit. Absolutely spot on. But I think when it comes to that, John, I think that there's a thin line after going over this movie. And I've watched it so many times and dissected it. And I really thought that was the theme of the movie's morality, and also the lines blurred of what is it to be a cop or criminal, right? You're facing the barrel of a gun. But I think there's a thin line between good and evil. And I've got that from going over this movie now. Just as there's a thin line between love and hate, right? Because there's emotion there, right? I mean, I'm sure maybe I've had it in my life where I've been loved by women. And then there's a thin line who feel hate towards you, right? Because there's a thin line between love and hate. But I think there's also a thin line between good and evil. And I think sometimes they could intertwine and kind of cross over, because technically his actions were evil, right? But we're all rooting for him because there was a sense of good, because he stopped this cretin, this animal, right? And I potentially look at it as he also saved the life and the baby of the psychologist and the baby, because I think she was the weak link. If anything, she would be next. So I think good and evil, there's a thin line. Do you think that also?
Oh, I think I totally. I think like I said, you know, like when I talk about, in order to be a good cop, you have to know how the criminal thinks, which means you were probably you have that criminal mindset yourself. What I'm really saying is, overall, what I'm saying is, in order to be a good person, you have to know what it is to be a bad person. In order to know what's morally correct, you have to know what's immoral. But what I'm saying here, what this scene is, you know, I think there's a huge difference between murdering someone and killing somebody. Right? If I murder you is when I kill you. You're not of harm to me at the moment, or in the future, or any of my family, and I murder you. And then killing somebody is totally different. Somebody breaks in my home. Somebody tries to kidnap my daughter. Somebody tries to assault my wife, and I kill them. I don't believe that's murder. I believe my conscience is clean. The question I'm asking is, and I think you answered it for me already, and I think I agree with you on it. Was this murder, or was this killing him?
Well, here is my way of kind of like an analogy, in the sense you give an analogy also, right? I was deployed overseas, and thank God I never had to kill anybody. So I'm very fortunate. But let's say you're in the Marine Corps, you're in the military, you're serving overseas in combat. And let's just say, rhetorically speaking, let's say you take the lives of 10 people in combat, and you get a medal as a hero. You're a hero. You get a medal, right? What happens in a few days? You're home, and you go out, and you celebrate, and you have too many beers, and then you go mow somebody down by accident, and you kill them. So they're both murder. You took the lives of someone or several people, but we view them differently, right? So I think that's kind of what we're saying here, right? And I understand what you're saying. When you take the life of another, what is really the intent? What is the purpose? Are you defending yourself? Are you defending others? So that's a great question. I think it comes down to this last scene. Is it murder, or is it taking the life of someone else for good? So I think that's I don't know. I'm really tossing around in my head. That's a good question.
I mean, but you kind of answered it for me though, and I think I agree with you. I think that this person was capable of doing anything, and he knew that, and that girl's life was still at risk. And he was like, it was definitely an act of vengeance, but it could have been also an act of protection too. Yvette says, "Are you attacking or defending?" That's what ultimately matters. I'm going to disagree with you, Yvette. I don't agree. It doesn't matter to me if I'm currently under the threat or not. Logic's Finest says Adolf had to be stopped, but how many died in the attempt as a result? Morality isn't always black and white. So, let's just say, for example, Yvette, that there's an individual who has the potential to murder your children, and you believe they're going to, but they're not a threat to you, nor are they attacking you. And you're like, you know what? This person's actually going to murder my children. This person's going to get my children. They're not going to do anything to me. They're never going to attack me. They're going to hide. They're going to wait. They're going to do it. And they're going to do it. And for whatever reason, this is just a hypothetical. And you go and do it to them first. To me, that's not murder. And that's not morally wrong. And I think if it's doing it in the ultimate good, I think maybe we could be consciously clean. But I think that I agree with you, Eric. I think that it's a real thin line. And then even poor versus rich is the thin line. And that, I think, is the rat on the rail. It doesn't matter where you live.
Yeah, I think that's what the rat is symbolic of, right? It doesn't matter where you live, where you're at. It's how you live in your life. Shout out to Steven S. Thank you so much. Being a great friend to the podcast. A lot of great comments, a lot of great input. Thanks for a great show. Happy St. Nicholas Day. Beware the Krampus. Yeah, shout out to you, brother. Coffee and donuts. We appreciate it. Yeah, I think that we're all capable of violence. I mean, let's be honest. And I think your analogy is perfect, spot on. If someone was threatening your kids and it was in real time and this was imminent, you would take action. And so would I. And so would anybody else. To protect our kids, to protect a parent, to protect a loved one, we would all take action. And if you say you wouldn't, you're lying. Because people that are dear to you, you'll take action because you love them. Absolutely. There is a fine line. And I think this movie really is symbolic of morality, evil, good, love. What is love? Seeing the good in people, right? Seeing what's underneath the surface, right? Because on the surface, Billy Costigan was a disaster, and Colin Sullivan had everything put together. But the psychologist, and hey, maybe it's women intuition, right? Forget about being a psychologist. Maybe it's woman's intuition. I'm a firm believer. Women, they have an intuition that men just don't have. They see things a lot of times below the surface that others don't see. Women have a great intuition for people. So, yeah, and she saw he was the right man, and she saw the good in him.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I hope everybody's praying for Daniel Penny today, because I think the conversation really rides home. Somebody brought it up in here. I don't know where it is in the chat now, but it's true, right? And again, I don't think that Daniel Penny meant to murder anybody, or meant to kill. He didn't. He 100% did not commit murder. It just came out right now. Now, Jor is deadlocked in Daniel Penny manslaughter trial over subway chokehold death. This just came out in the New York Post right this second. But I think, that plays in too, right? Is Daniel Penny a bad guy? Is he evil? I don't think so. He tried to protect others, and someone lost their life in the course of it. And the person died later on, not right then and there, because they still had a pulse when the cops arrived. He still had a pulse. So, I think it plays in. This whole tale plays out in life often. Is Daniel Penny a bad guy? Is he a cop? Is he a criminal? Is he a good person? Is he a bad person? I'm going to say right now, I'm going to say right now, I think that Daniel Penny is a good person. I think that it takes a very strong person to stand up for others. Like I said, if my wife and my children were on that train that day, I would wish there were more men like Daniel Penny on that train.
Absolutely. I mean, let's be honest. We don't know him personally, but we know his background. We know he served his country as a Marine. We know that he stood up for others, took action as a good Samaritan. This is the type of people that we want. And that's why I say there's a difference between being nice and being good. And sometimes being good means you have to be not so nice. And sometimes people that are nice are actually not being good because they're weak. And they're actually being nice because it's self-serving or because they're afraid to actually stand on moral principle. So that's why I would say that NYPD, especially the upper echelon, suffers from the nice guy syndrome. Because there's a big difference between being nice and being good. Because Sergeant Digman was not nice throughout the entire movie, right? That's why it's funny. He wasn't nice, but he was good. In the end, he was good.
100%. Wasn't a nice guy. Not a nice guy. And it's funny because DiCaprio never liked him either. Like Costigan never liked him either, but he trusted him. Right? He respected him. He never liked him, but he trusted him and he respected him. It was, that was definitely that dichotomy. So listen, this was fun. It was 3 hours, 10 minutes. It went a little longer than I thought it would do, but I thought this was fun. Let's maybe do this again sometime in the future. I had a great time. I think it was good. So great idea, Eric. I thought it was good. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I look forward to it. I look forward to doing another one. So, good times. Anything you want to add before we run out of here?
No, I just want to say this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much, friends and listeners, for sitting with us for 3 hours and 10 minutes. I think it was cool. Change it up a little bit, switch gears. If anyone here are friends and listeners, you're very important to building the network of this podcast. If you have any ideas for a type of show you would like, let us know. We'll definitely consider it, and we're willing to try different things. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. Stay safe, everybody, and we'll see you Monday. Enjoy your weekend. Shout out to you. Thank you.
Later, peoples. There we go. All right. See you guys later.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888-901 Blue. That's 888-901 Blue.